I grew up in a town where you didn't have to lock your bike or your back door. People waved at each other. You knew your neighbors, their dogs, even their routines. My whole elementary school experience was basically lived inside a single hallway. There were maybe 10 or 20 of us per grade, tops, and the same kids stuck around from 1st grade to 8th grade. We knew everything about one another, who got held back, whose parents were splitting up, who still wet the bed, even if nobody dared to say it aloud. We played baseball in the cul-de-sac, rode bikes behind the grocery store, took turns hosting birthday sleepovers with nothing but popcorn, surge, and a rented movie from that dirty old Planet Video. It was the 90s. Our lives revolved around Nintendo 64, Pogs, and who could do the best Jim Carrey impression. My parents trusted me, maybe too much. I was a latchkey kid by the 3rd grade, let myself in, microwaved a Hot Pocket, and watched whatever was on Fox Kids Block until they got home. I didn't get into much trouble. Most of us really didn't, there wasn't much to get into. Sleepovers, though, were how we marked time. Somebody's birthday meant Nerf wars, pizza, and fart jokes until somebody cried and puked. The houses were always safe, clean, and normal. Moms in fuzzy robes, dads who grilled hamburgers, old siblings who left us alone. That's just how it was. So when Mac Wallen invited the whole 6th grade crew over for his birthday sleepover, we all figured it'd be the same deal. A movie, maybe some late night junk food, somebody's hand in a bowl of warm water to see if they'd piss themselves, because, well, that's just how they always go. Mac was new. He and his older brother Sam had moved into town that summer. Their house was in the dumpier part of the neighborhood where the roads weren't striped and half the lawns were just dirt patches. Sam was in 8th grade, but he didn't seem to like it. He was tall and greasy and had this mullet. All his shirts were missing sleeves and he had this twitch in his jaw like he was chewing something invisible. Even when he wasn't talking, he looked like he was about to spit. He didn't go out of his way to be mean, but nobody wanted to be near him. There was just something off about him. Mac, on the other hand, was different. Kind of funny, kind of crazy, a wild card. He'd say anything, try anything, and he didn't seem to care what people thought about him. That made him exciting in a way, especially to a bunch of bored 12-year-olds. He was like a free pass to mischief. Everybody wanted in on it. So when he handed out invitations, these cheap little printouts with monster trucks on them, we all said yes, of course. Every single last one of us. But of course, because you're listening to my story, we had no idea what we were walking into. We got off the bus late that Friday, backpacks slung over our shoulders, talking loud, acting tough. Mac was leading us onto the porch with that wide grin, crooked front teeth showing. His house, or maybe trailer, it was hard to tell, was sad low and sagging, like it had given up completely. There were 2 busted lawn chairs in the front and crushed beer cans sitting in the windowsill. One of the shutters hung by a single hinge. Sam stood there in the doorway, arms crossed, chewing on a toothpick. He didn't say anything, just watched us file inside, one by one. Inside, the place smelled like wet laundry and burnt grease. The living room carpet was a weird shade of gray that crunched when you stepped on it. Mac's mom came out from the kitchen, smiling at us. She had these sharp cheekbones and was wearing a skimpy pink tank top. No bra, nipples poking through, which made half the boys go red in the face. She handed out paper plates with cake already on them and said, "Y'all have fun tonight, okay?" Then disappeared back down the hall. A minute later, we heard a car door slam and then the rumble of an engine. Mac turned to us and said, "They're going to the bar. We got the whole house to ourselves." And for some reason, that didn't sit right with me. I'd never been left alone at a sleepover before, not without a parent at least within yelling distance. A few of the other boys hesitated too, looking at each other, but nobody said anything. No one wanted to be the baby that called their mom in the moment. And at first it was fine. Loud music, sugar, junk food. We played truth or dare, shot rubber bands at each other, tried to wrestle inside this cramped hallway. Sam hung around, not saying much, just grinning whenever somebody got hurt or fell too hard. Around 9, Max said he had something better than any kind of movie. He led us into the back room where he shared with Sam, pulled open a wooden chest by the bed. Inside that box were stacks of tapes, mostly unlabeled. Everyone immediately started hooting and nudging at each other. He slid a tape into the VCR and turned the little TV on. The screen filled with grainy footage. Somebody was filming in a bedroom, shaky cam style. And right away I knew it wasn't a movie. It was real. Mac's mom was on the bed, totally naked, hair longer than, but definitely her. His dad, or somebody who looked like him, was standing behind her. And they weren't alone. A few of the boys laughed nervously, but the room had gone cold. No one was really breathing anymore. Sam stood behind us, arms crossed, and watched us watch the movie. "You like that, huh?" he said. "My dad used to tape everything." I wanted to leave right then, but I didn't know how to say it. Mac was grinning like it was just a joke. "That's just one of them. You want to see the rest?" He held up another tape in front of us. "No, dude, we're good," somebody muttered, but it was drowned out completely. Next came the toys, pulled out of a drawer in the nightstand inside their parents' room. Rubbery, oily things that smelled faintly of latex and sweat. One looked like a dog toy dipped in Vaseline. Mac tossed it to one of the boys, who caught it and dropped it like it was on fire. And just when we thought we'd hit the bottom, Sam pulled out this small wooden box from underneath the bed. He clicked it open, and inside was a revolver. Real, heavy, and shiny. The metal looked clean, like it'd been oiled recently. He held it up and said, "This is my dad's. Ain't it beautiful?" He pointed it at the ceiling first and then at one of the boys. "Bang," he said really quickly and loud. Everybody flinched. Mac laughed like we were a bunch of girls. "It's not loaded," he said, but his voice cracked when he said it. Sam walked around the room, slow pressing the barrel against foreheads, one after the other. I could feel my stomach folding in on itself. The boy next to me was shaking. When the gun got to me, I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. Then I felt that cold metal kiss my skin. Sam grinned at me, clicked the hammer back, and then whispered, "What if?" And then he moved on. After that, the night completely had turned. The games stopped being games, and Sam kicked the family dog, a scruffy, sick-looking mutt named Jagger, right in the ribs for barking loud. Mac caught this mouse in a shoebox, then dumped it down the garbage disposal. Somebody said don't, but it was too late. The whir of the machine, the sound it made, was blended alive. We all stood there just watching silently. Sam opened up the microwave and pulled out this small garden snake out of an old fish tank. Mac was laughing, but his eyes didn't match. They looked flat, almost like he wasn't really there. I turned away though. I didn't want to watch this one. The last straw came when they lit the neighbor's trash can on fire. We all crept outside trying to be quiet, but Sam was spraying lighter fluid and giggling to himself. The flame shot up fast, and he danced around it, bare feet on the pavement. I looked at the rest of the boys. One was crying, one looked like he was ready to throw up. The fun was gone, long gone. This wasn't even mischief anymore. This wasn't even rebellion. It was pure madness to me. I slipped back inside and grabbed my backpack, laced up my shoes with my shaking hands. My heart was pounding so loud I couldn't hear anything else. I opened up the front door, stepped off into the dark, and didn't look back. Not even once. The streetlights buzzed overhead. The night felt endless, and I just started walking. I didn't run, even though I wanted to. Every part of me screamed to just get away from there fast, but I didn't. I walked, one foot in front of the other, all the way down that cracked sidewalk, past parked cars and silent houses with normal lives behind the curtains. I think I even whispered the Lord's Prayer at some point, or maybe it was just some song that I'd heard on the radio. My brain didn't feel like it was working right. It felt like the world had shifted slightly now, like everything was tilted, off-center and shameful. My house was 8 blocks away, and each block felt like a mile itself. Every gust of wind made me flinch, and I kept thinking Sam was behind me the whole time, or Mac, or even worse, somebody had followed me out of the TV screen, something from that grainy, grimy tape. Some man with a camera and a mask and a laugh like gravel. I made it home just after 11. My parents were in the living room watching the news. My mom was knitting and my dad was drinking tea. I opened up the door and stepped inside, and they looked up like I was just back from prison. My mom immediately said, "What's wrong?" I didn't answer. I dropped my backpack and just stood there. I must have looked like hell because she was off the couch and at my side in seconds. "Honey, what's wrong?" I started crying, not loud or blubbering, just quiet, whole body. My dad stood up confused, and I couldn't get the words out fast enough. I told him about the gun, about the tapes, about the dog, the snake, the fire. I told him everything except for the parts that I didn't fully understand. The way Sam looked at us, the way Mac laughed without even blinking or thinking twice. My mom held me so tight I could barely breathe. My dad turned the TV off and just said nothing for a really long time. The next morning, everything happened pretty quick. My parents called the school called the police, and a couple of the other boys' parents had already called in too. Apparently, one of the kids ran home in the middle of the night. Another one woke up screaming. It didn't take long for the Wallen place to be crawling with cops. I didn't go to school that day. None of us did, actually. Rumors flew around fast, and Sam got sent away, Mac got suspended. Their parents were under investigation for all kinds of things. The tapes were confiscated, so was the gun. Animal control took the dog, though I doubt he lived much longer after that night. The Wallens didn't stick around as well. A for sale sign went up the next week, and by the time Halloween had rolled around, the house was already boarded up. Nobody moved in after them either. Last I heard, it got condemned a few years later, torn down and then replaced by a strip of gravel and weeds. Nothing grows there now either. Makes me wonder if anything else happened there. My friends and I didn't really talk about it much after this, not really. Everybody who was there that night, me and the other boys, we stayed close for a while after. I guess trauma kinda does that to you. But by the end of the 8th grade, things had changed. A few moved away, a few fell in with rougher crowds, and one kid got picked up for theft his junior year. Saw in the paper. No one was the same after that night. As for me, I turned quiet, still went to school, obviously, still smiled in my pictures, but something in me curled up and died that night. I don't do sleepovers anymore, I don't go to parties, I don't trust anybody who talked way too much shit. I always check my doors, I always listen for the click of a lock. I became a bit of a hermit, and honestly, I kind of prefer it this way. I only ever went to one sleepover in my entire life. One. And that was plenty. It wasn't like my parents were super strict or even religious or anything. They just wanted to know the people that I was staying with, and after what happened that night, they made damn sure I never stayed the night at anybody's house again. It was 5th grade. The kid was Tommy Jurgens. Everybody liked Tommy. He was this little wiry dude with a loud mouth and this fake confidence that somehow worked for him. He knew every cheat code for every PlayStation game and could spit like 8 feet straight up in the air, then catch it back with his mouth. That kind of kid. Yeah, baby. We thought he was cool, but we didn't really know Tommy, not the way we thought we did. It turns out most of what made him cool was just him being raised by a pack of absolute lunatics. We'd see hints occasionally, like how he never brought lunch, just dollar bills and scratchers, or how he said these weird grown-up things, stuff like, "My mom's old man just got out again," or "Uncle Mike's got court in Flagstaff." All that kind of skated over our heads back then, just Tommy being Tommy. He'd been in our class since 2nd grade, and even though he didn't have a ton of close friends, we all wanted to be around him. His life just seemed electric and different. So when he handed out birthday invites on a notebook paper, drawn in Sharpie and riddled with spelling mistakes, I still said yes without even asking my folks first. They weren't thrilled when I showed them, but Tommy's name rang a familiar enough bell that they gave in. I think my mom called his mom and talked for a full 90 seconds before saying it was okay. "All right, but if anything feels off," she said, "you can call us. I mean it." That Friday came. We were all rolled out the bus, hyped out of our minds. Tommy lived on the edge of town in this saggy house with 4 trucks parked out front and 2 boats in the yard. Neither seemed to be seaworthy though. Their garage was open, and I swear to God there was already a drum kit being set up. Real drums. A couple of guys carrying amps inside. We hadn't even taken off our backpacks yet either. Tommy met us on the porch with that usual grin and said, You guys are gonna lose your freaking minds." And he wasn't lying. I remember walking in and thinking it was more like a party at my uncle's house than a birthday thing. There were adults already there, friends of Tommy's parents, I guess, all drinking and smoking and hanging out in the living room, laughing and didn't take notice of us at all. There were stacks of beer on top of the kitchen table, and the hallway smelled like somebody had burnt popcorn and covered it with weed smoke. Still, in the moment, I think we were just far too young to process what was wrong. At first, it just seemed like chaos. Loud music, cold sodas, big yard. We honestly figured that we stepped into the coolest birthday ever, but we had no idea. The backyard was the size of a football field, or at least it felt like it. There's a rusted trampoline with a bent leg that tilted to one side when more than 2 kids jumped on it, and somebody had duct taped an old dartboard to the trunk of a dying mesquite tree. The ground was patchy dirt and crabgrass, with empty beer cans littering the corners. A cooler full of orange sodas and RC Cola sat in the middle like a prize, and everybody tore into it. Then, the band showed up. And I'm not kidding, an actual local band. 4 dudes in ripped jeans and dark sunglasses, lugging gear across the lawn onto a piece of plywood propped up on cinder blocks. One of them wore a vest with no shirt underneath, called themselves Code 3, and the lead singer yelled, "Let's wake this town up," inside a mic and screeched that made all the dogs in the neighborhood bark immediately. They kicked it off with "You give love a bad name," and every 5th grader in that backyard lost their minds. Even the shy kids were pogoing like it was a real concert. We were 11 years old, drinking sodas, hurling darts at a tree, and listening to a live Bon Jovi cover band, while a drunk guy that we'd never met grilled hot dogs on the porch. It was insane and also kind of amazing. As the sun dipped and the bug zapper came to life, the mood shifted though. The adults were getting sloppy. They weren't just a few beers deep anymore. There were bottles of liquor going now. I saw a guy pour something clear into a red Solo cup and then stumble into the garage. Inside, a few of the other guys, dudes in their 20s I guess, were playing darts for money, real cash laid out onto a washing machine like a poker table. Tommy's dad, or the guy that we thought was his dad, was this thick, sweaty guy in cargo shorts with a big chain around his neck. He was barking at somebody named Shane about cheating. "You crossed the line, you dumb shit, I saw you," he said. Shane was this lanky, red-faced, holding a dart like he was about to throw it into somebody's eye. They had a second dartboard in the garage where the grown-ups were playing. We were all just standing there. I remember one of the kids, Tyler, saying, "Should we get out of here?" Before we could move though, Shane threw the dart at the board and missed it completely. It thunked into the wall, and that's when Tommy's dad shoved him, hard. Shane staggered, knocked over a milk crate of tools, and then came up swinging. The next 10 seconds were pure noise. Metal clattering, fist hitting meat, glass breaking. One guy got slammed into a water heater so hard it sounded like a gunshot. We just stood there, frozen. A few kids even started crying. The fight broke up after Tommy's mom, who'd been chain smoking on the back porch, came in and screamed at both of them to knock it off. She had this voice like salt and vinegar. I watched her dig her nails into Tommy's dad's arm and then drag him out by his very skin. "Party's back on," she slurred, and the band started another song like nothing had even happened. After that, the lines between what was fun and what was wrong began to blur really quickly. They busted out drugs not long after. Not weed in a discreet little joint either, we're talking actual drugs. A coffee table in the living room got cleared off, and Tommy's mom dumped out a sandwich bag full of greenish bud and what looked like a literal pile of white powder. It was almost like watching a movie. I thought it was flour at first, but it definitely wasn't. Some guy named Zeke started chopping it up with a Blockbuster card. I remember him saying, "Don't worry, this ain't coke, it just got some go fast," like it made it okay. Another adult, I think Tommy's aunt, was lighting up a glass pipe and singing along to Panama. Tommy came walking in the garage with this big stupid grin and a joint in his mouth, like it was candy. We all just stared at him and nobody said a word. "Dude, hit this," he said, offering it up to Cody Anderson. Cody shook his head and stepped back like it was a snake. Tommy just shrugged and took another puff. He coughed like a dying animal and laughed until he fell over. At that point, I was still having fun in this weird high-wire way. We'd snuck into an R-rated movie, and now we were holding our breath, hoping to not get caught. It was insane, yeah, but it didn't feel dangerous, at least not yet. We ended up in the backyard, sitting on lawn chairs, drinking warm soda, and watching Code 3 finish their last set. The adults were blitzed, falling over, laughing, forgetting their own kind of name drunk. Somebody was dry heaving in the bushes too. I was telling a ghost story to the other kids when we heard yelling again, same voices as before. Tommy's dad and, of course, Shane. "You shorted me," somebody screamed. "Nah, you just fucking suck at darts, Shane." Then another crash, a scream, and people running. We all stood up. A couple of kids took off toward the side yard. The rest of us crept around the garage, doing our best to be quiet. I could already feel the air shift, the way everything got really quiet really quickly. Shane was on the ground, blood on his shirt. Tommy's dad had a knife in one hand, still open. Not a kitchen knife either, one of those folding ones with a knuckle guard. Shane was moaning and gripping his side. Then somebody screamed. And then, bang, bang, bang. 3 shots, real ones, close and deafening. Screaming erupted everywhere. Tommy's mom was laying on the lawn crying. One of the band guys had tackled the dude with the gun and then got it away from him. No one got hit, thank God, but there were shell casings on the ground. The spell was now broken though. This wasn't a party anymore. It was a war zone. The cops showed up in under 10 minutes, sirens blaring, lights throwing red and blue across the lawn like a crime scene disco. I was still in the backyard, clutching my shoes and shaking so bad I could barely even untie the laces. Cody Anderson was crying and wouldn't stop saying over and over, "Did we just get shot at?" They herded us onto the sidewalk, told us to sit down and not to move. The neighbors were outside now, talking to the officers, pointing at the house like it was all normal. A woman wrapped up in a blanket asked me if I was okay. I just nodded back, but I wasn't, not even close. Parents started showing up, headlights rolling down the street one after another. My mom's face when she spotted me, I'll never forget it. She didn't even ask questions. She just wrapped me up in her arms and held me like I just came back from war. Tommy's dad got cuffed and loaded up into a cruiser. Shane got hauled off into an ambulance, conscious but bleeding through a wad of paper towels somebody had slapped on his ribs. A few other adults were questioned right there in the driveway. One guy took off before the cops could even get his name, just vanished off into the night with a backpack full of God knows what. We didn't end up going back to school on Monday, and neither did Tommy. Rumors, of course, flew around. The gun was stolen, the white powder was meth. One of the band members was an ex-con. I didn't care, I just wanted to forget it all, but honestly, I couldn't. None of us could. My mom told the school I wasn't allowed to sleep over at anybody's house again. "Not until you're out of my house and paying your own bills," she said to me, and that was that. I didn't argue. Last I heard, Tommy and his family had moved down the globe to somewhere near Yuma. He never came back. And just like I said at the beginning, I never stayed the night at another kid's house again.
The story happened late October of 2022. It was my senior year of high school. My girlfriend Jade and I decided to go to a party that was to celebrate our football season, which had recently just ended. I had played football for 8 years at this point, and Jade had been doing cheerleading for 10 years. We felt like we should attend to give a proper send-off to our respective sports. Plus, I knew the host pretty well. We'll call him Jake, because he was also on the team and he had the house all to himself. The plan was for me to be the designated driver for Jade, my friend who we'll call Michael, and his girlfriend who we'll call Morgan, who were also coming along with us. Michael lives 2 cities away. Him and his family moved his senior year, and he decided to just finish high school in our city. Besides the main downtown area that's our state capital, our cities aren't very big, so Michael was only a 20-minute drive. This is important for later. Halloween was right around the corner, so that was the theme of the party. I went as Jack Skellington, just wearing the suit, and had Jane do my makeup to look like a skeleton while she went as Sally. Michael went as Chucky, and Morgan went as his bride. I'm like 90% sure her name is Tiffany, but if I'm wrong, I apologize. Anyways, we go to the party and a lot more people than I expected showed up. Basically the entire cheer squad, almost the entire football team, and even people from our rival high school, their football team, and their cheer squad there as well. And like what you would expect from a typical high school party. People didn't know how to control their drinking, and well, things got really rowdy. I was playing a tag team beer pong game with Michael against 2 other friends when a familiar voice called my name. I turned to look, and it was a kid from our high school who we'll call Bob, wearing a Jason mask and his usual hoodie with jeans. Now, Bob was an odd specimen to say the least. I met him in my first term history class when he randomly came up to me and started talking to me. From the start, I could tell that he wasn't very good at socializing. Being on the football team, people expect me to be stuck up, but I try to be very open and nice with everyone, so I got to know him pretty well in that class. A little too well, in fact. He would openly tell me and my other friends in class about his frustrations about being single and a virgin, and how desperate he was to lose his virginity. He also didn't really know how to read a room or pick up on social cues. He also would talk like we've been buddies forever, and would make really unusual or out-of-pocket jokes. He also had really well-off parents. Both of them drove sports cars, and he lived in a huge house. Despite this though, he would wear the same clothes almost every day and had really long, greasy hair. He would also start high-fiving me in the hallway, which wasn't a big deal because it was just one more person to high-five on my way to class. Well, not long after that, I knew someone who went to junior high with him, and Jade told me how he had the biggest crush on her in junior high, and how he was only trying to be friendly with me to get closer to her. That didn't make much sense to me at the time, so I try not to look at him differently, but the thought had always lingered in my head. Especially since when he would high-five me, Jade was always there, and he would try to stick around a little longer and always include himself in the conversation. Again, I had no problem with this, especially because he wasn't stalking me 24/7. It's just at times I found it mildly annoying and creepy. He started small talk, and I had tried to answer his questions as much as I could, but to be honest, I was way more focused on the beer pong game. He left me alone after a while. The party started to die down, and I was sitting in a circle with some teammates reminiscing over our times on the team and talking about how we'd really miss it when I decided to rally my group and head out. Jade was sitting in a circle of her own with the cheer team maybe 5 feet away from me, probably doing the same thing, so gathering her wasn't that hard. The hard ones to find were Michael and his girlfriend. I tried calling Michael, but he didn't answer, and I didn't have his girlfriend's number. Our first assumption was that they were probably just making out or something in a bedroom. So we went about the house knocking on door to door, opening them and seeing if there was anyone there, then shutting the door. Bob saw me and Jade appear into our room and close the door when he then came up to us and said, "Whoa, what are you guys trying to do in there?" in a joking tone that just came off as creepy and awkward. I asked him if he'd seen our friend, and he just replied no, so we kept looking. Bob then started following us around, which I was starting to get annoyed with. I eventually found Michael in the bathroom puking his guts out in the toilet with his girlfriend. While he was finishing up, I went to my friend Jank and thanked him for his hospitality, and I offered to come over the next day to help him clean up. He said it was okay, that he actually had some people spending the night, including his girlfriend, who was going to help him in the morning. I still told him I would stop by if he needed help. We were heading to my car when I had then heard Bob say, "Hey man, could you give me a ride?" I was a little annoyed because I was already pretty tired, and I already had to drive out of the way to drop off Michael, Morgan, and Jade, but I just said yes anyways because I'm nice. I also didn't mind driving up to his neighborhood because there were a lot of nice houses, and around the Halloween season they're really fun to look at. I dropped him off first and started to drive to Michael's, which was now probably going to be a 25-minute drive, and it was already around 2:30 a.m. at this point. Morgan was spending the night at his house, so after dropping them off, I had started to drive back to our city. Jade had offered spending the night because I was tired, and I thanked her profusely. We got to my house, and after I changed and washed off as much of the makeup as I could, I just about crashed in my bed. I woke up to Jade in the bathroom that connected to my room. She apologized for waking me up and then laid down next to me. After a couple of seconds, she then got up and asked if I heard that. I listened and heard footsteps right above my window well. My room is in the basement of my house, so the footsteps would be in our backyard on the west alleyway between our house and our gate and fence. It's probably just raccoons, I said. No, they sound too heavy to be a raccoon, Jade then said. It's probably just bear, I said, referring to my 100-pound Malamute. No, we locked his doggy door, remember? She asked. He has a special doggy door that only opens when it senses this fob that we keep on our dog's collar. This keeps the raccoons out. It also had an option to completely lock, so even with the fob, the door won't open. I didn't remember locking it, but I also didn't have an answer, so I just stayed silent. She then got up. Where are you going? I asked, and she then replied that she was going to check if it really was bear. I would really feel bad if I had let her go check it out alone. On my way up the stairs to the first floor, I saw my dog sleeping in front of the basement door, so it couldn't have been him. But now I was curious, so I go to our backyard door and opened it and then stepped out onto the porch. I looked around and couldn't really see much from on the porch with the porch light, so I stepped down and started investigating with my phone flashlight. I could see the glow of my LED lights through my window and didn't really see anything else. That's when an animatronic in my west side neighbor's backyard went off, scaring me. It was some sort of crypt keeper thing that has green glowing eyes and talks. My neighbors love Halloween, so they have decorations in their front and backyard. I jumped and this caused me to speedily walk back inside. Jade had asked me if I saw anything, and I just said no because I really didn't. We got back into my bed and I fell asleep. I woke up again in the middle of the night to the sounds of the animatronic going off yet again. I just assumed it was a motion sensor or something, and it was picking up a stray cat or raccoons, then went back to sleep. I woke up again in the middle of the night because of my LED lights. I like having them on while I try to sleep, but after I sleep they really bother me, and mine doesn't have a timer. I heard the animatronic again, but this time when I turned off the lights, I was surprised to see my window well glowing green. We have barred covers over them so that nothing can get down in them, but the well was glowing green and it sounded like the animatronic was right above my well. I was now freaked out. I don't know how Jade stayed asleep, but I laid there scared to move or anything. Eventually it stopped. I just sat there for a while awake trying to calm down. I thought that it had to be someone messing with me, so after scrolling through my phone a bit to get tired again, I fell back to sleep. I woke up the next morning and saw my LED lights were still off, so I definitely wasn't dreaming about it last night. While Jade was getting ready, I called Michael to see if he was messing with me. He didn't answer. He was probably still asleep from being hammered last night. I then realized, why would Michael drive all the way over to my house drunk just to mess with me? I know his girlfriend wouldn't drive him either because she's more of a homebody type. Then it hit me. Our neighbors have a son who's my age. In fact, he played on the football team as well, and I knew him very well. I called him and I was actually surprised when he answered. I started telling him about the animatronic scaring me while I was outside, but I didn't mention the part to him about it being above my well. I wanted him to think that I just slept through it and that he went through all that work just for me to sleep through it like a baby. Well, he then told me that all of the animatronics should be unplugged because he and his family are out of town for the weekend and that they wanted to prevent an electrical fire or anything of that nature. I've known him for a while and I know that he can't lie very well, so this really caught me off guard. I also realized that I didn't see him at the party, so he really was probably out of town. I asked if I could go over and just make sure that they were unplugged. I texted Michael to call me when he was awake. Jade was finished and she said she would come along because she wanted to hang out with Jake's girlfriend. I explained how we have to go over nearby to check on all the animatronics, and she came with me. I went straight to the skeleton one to see if it was plugged in. It was unplugged. I followed the wire up and down at least 3 times just to make sure I was holding the right unplugged wire. I was. When we got there, the mess was already picked up besides a few cups. I went down to the basement to get another box of garbage bags with Jake, and I then saw a Jason mask on the floor. I picked it up and it was Bob's. The events of last night hit me. The footsteps, the skeleton. I wondered if it was Bob in my backyard. I thought there was no way. He doesn't even know where I live. He also isn't very coordinated, so seeing him carry an animatronic is just something that I couldn't even imagine. We did find it weird though how we would find his mask in the basement of the house, the one part that was off limits. Michael called me later in the day. I explained everything to him, and he was adamant that it wasn't him. I still don't know if those footsteps were connected with the animatronic, and I still don't know if Bob was even connected to those events. After that though, he had started acting even more strange. Either that or my mind really was open to how odd he was. Either way, as Halloween comes up, those neighbors have continued to put the Crypt Keeper in their front yard, and I still wonder to this day what happened on that chilly October night. The year of 2003 was a tough one for my family and I. My mother and father had just gone through a divorce, and my father was working late one Halloween night. I was 14 and my sister was 7, so my dad trusted me to take my little sister Emily trick-or-treating. When Emily and I had gotten back from school, I had noticed a piece of paper on my mailbox. It was just a piece of paper that said, "I would die for you." As you can imagine, this gave me the chills, so I brought it in to show my dad, but he wasn't home. He must have left the house early for work, so I decided to just throw it away and not let Emily know about it. That night, our plan was to go out and hit every house and get more candy than ever. We went out and we had a very fun time, and I even ran into some friends. We were on our walk back home when we had heard a voice coming from someone's house. "Hey kids, hey, come over here," a man said. We looked around and we didn't see anyone until Emily grabbed me and then screamed and pointed at the window. There was a man dressed like a clown. "Come in. I have Play-Doh and I have any candy here you can imagine." We then ran as fast as we could down the road screaming until we finally made it home. Once I got home, I realized that our front door wasn't just unlocked, but wide open. I remember saying hello a few times until I figured that maybe the wind just blew our door open. We sat in the living room and tried to just forget all about our encounter with the strange clown in the window. We were counting our Halloween candy and watching Hocus Pocus until we had heard someone knock at the door. We knew that it couldn't be our dad and knew for a fact that it wasn't our mom. "Who's there?" I said. There was a long pause until the person responded. "I'm Jesus Christ. I'm here to save you from the evil of Halloween." Emily screamed and we then ran into our dad's room with the door locked. I tried calling our dad a few times, but he wouldn't answer. Then we saw a figure near the window of my dad's room. It was a person standing there in a suit with a pig's mask. "It's okay. I'm Jesus, and I died for the sins of the children," he said. We then hid behind our father's bed and were scared shitless. We could hear him tapping the window and humming some strange song. "Let me in or I'll slit my wrist tonight when I watch you sleep," he said. We both just laid on the floor shaking in fear. Emily had started to cry, and I had to stay strong for her. After a while, the man had left, but my sister and I still stayed in the same spot behind our dad's bed for over an hour until my dad got home. We told him what happened, and he didn't even really care or listen much. He just wanted to rest after a long day of work. The very next day, we had had a disc on our front porch. It was a blank DVD disc that had "Do not watch unless you love Jesus" written all over it with Sharpie. I went into my room and started watching it on my PlayStation 2. It was some of the scariest and disturbing imagery I had ever seen. It was just very disturbing images of a very, very tall man walking in the woods on stilts in a suit. The video would cut with a VHS static effect to a silhouette of a man in a field on a cross. It would just keep cutting to random disturbing images. One other image I remember was in black and white of an extremely overweight man in bed with a ton of white face paint eating out of a tub of ice cream with his bare hands. The video had no other sound than a slight static sound in the background. I gave the DVD to my dad and told him what had happened, and he said he would take a look. That was the last I'd ever seen of that DVD, and my dad never mentioned anything of it again. He told me that he just threw it away and didn't really get a chance to watch it. I guess if my dad didn't care, then neither should I. I wonder who that could have been and why they wanted to scare a child so damn badly. Were they really dangerous, or were they just playing some really sick prank? I guess I'll never know. The year of 2014 was one of my favorite times in my life. I had just graduated high school, got my first job, and was ready for life to really begin. My high school buddies and I were still very close since we all lived in the same area. We kept our weekend shenanigans for as long as we could, until sometime in our early 20s when we all parted ways. Some of those memories we made really have a special place in my heart, but there's one incident that will rest in my memory in the most unsettling way. It was early October of 2014, and my friends and I were really excited for all of the fun we would get into during the Halloween season. There were tons of parties, haunted houses, as well as bonfires throughout the season. One night, me and two friends and their girlfriends were looking for something spooky to get into. It was myself, my buddy James, his girlfriend Morgan, and Trevor and his girlfriend Allison. I was the single guy of the group, and it never really bothered me to be the fifth wheel when hanging out with them. Trevor mentioned this old cemetery in our town that we were all familiar with. The cemetery was really creepy since there was an Indian burial ground smack in the middle of it. Our plan was to use one of those stupid ghost hunting apps, drink beer, smoke some pot, and just hang out and maybe see if something creepy would happen if we were lucky. When we arrived, there were no lights in the cemetery, and it was very dark. The cemetery was closed and gated, so we had to jump a fence to get in. I led the way with my iPhone flashlight since the other two guys were comforting their scared girlfriends. We were having a good time until Allison swore that she saw someone. We all thought she was full of it, but she swore there was a person in the woods. This really creeped me out, but I didn't let it bother me. I was young and overly confident in my ability to kick someone's ass if placed in a bad situation, so I played the tough guy. Don't worry, Allison. If there's someone actually out there, trust me, they don't want to mess with us, and I'll make damn sure of it, I said with a smirk. After a few minutes of ghost hunting, we all then heard a cough come from the top of the burial ground. It was hard to see up there since it was dark, and a big tree stood right on top of it. I wanted to be the hard ass of the group, so I had started walking close to it. "Hello?" I said as I started to walk up the hill. I heard and saw nothing, so I started to turn around. Then as I was heading back to my group of friends, we all heard the sound of an acoustic guitar playing. We all froze in silence and listened. We started to follow the music and we could hear the man singing a song about a skeleton. The lyrics were something like, "Poor skeleton, I've waited for you. Poor skeleton, I'll take you home." The girls were far behind as they refused to go anywhere near the music. Trevor stood back with them as James and I went to go see who would be playing music in a cemetery this late at night. We hid behind a tree as we watched a skinny, middle-aged man with a fedora play a song. He was alone, and it seemed like he thought he was the only one in the cemetery. He then stopped playing and then just stared at the tree where we were hiding. I decided not to startle the guy, so I stepped from behind the tree. "Hey man, I heard your music and I wanted to get a listen. Sounds good," I said as he just continued to stare at us. "We were just ghost hunting and having some beer. We hope you don't mind," I said to him. The man just sat there still as a statue and just stared at us. I still get chills whenever I think of him just sitting there in the pure darkness right next to a grave. You couldn't see his face since the fedora mostly covered it. We began walking back to the girls and Trevor when we then heard the man then say, "Yeah, sure." James and I just stood there. When we turned around, he was in the same spot but standing. "What was that?" James said. The man started running towards us, and in an instant reaction, we ran off. The rest of our friends saw us running and thought we were just messing around. "Let's go! We have to go!" I said. "He's coming after us!" Trevor and the girls just laughed and made jokes. They thought we were kidding until they then saw him appear from the darkness. "This is my cemetery," the man said. "You think you belong here? You think you can laugh and make fun of me?" We stood there frozen in fear. "You better stay the hell away from us, man," I told him. He then ran straight towards us as I held my fist up ready to hit him. He came really close to us, then jetted to the right straight into the woods. He just kept going until we couldn't see him. The 5 of us ran to the fence and then left. The next day, I asked my mom if she knew of anyone who owned that cemetery, and she said that the owners are usually there during the week just cutting the grass, and I should report what happened to them. Trevor and I went by a few days later and got to speak with the groundskeeper. We told him what happened, and he told us that we shouldn't be going to the old cemetery after hours. He lectured us for a short while, then addressed the concern that we had about the man. He told us they've caught all kinds of strange activity going on there at night. He said the most common are Satanists that come from the city at night and try performing odd rituals at the cemetery. He told us that he suspects the man to be a local who lives with his parents. He described the guy as an oddball who likes to walk around the cemetery during the day with no business being there. His description of the man was also pretty spot on from what I could remember seeing. I still to this day have not found out who that man might have been, but knowing now what I already know, I will never return to that cemetery at night.
I turned 12 that summer when the most unbelievable thing happened in our quiet little town. A water park called Aqua Blast opened its doors to the public. It became the sole topic of conversation. My best friend Alex and I came across a pamphlet for it, promising enormous slides twisting like snakes, wave pools rolling like the ocean, and a lazy river that offered ultimate relaxation. Naturally, we were both eager to go. For weeks, we pleaded with our parents, exhibiting our best behavior, and even doing some extra chores. We went all out, and at last, our efforts paid off. Our parents gave us 2-day passes to Aqua Blast. The day we went was perfect. The sun shone brightly, the sky was an ideal blue, and the air buzzed with anticipation. We met at the entrance of Aqua Blast, practically bouncing with excitement. As we entered, the park was even more incredible than we had imagined. The sheer size of it was astonishing, with people everywhere laughing, screaming, and splashing around. Alex and I headed straight for the biggest slide, called the Mega Plunge. It was a massive slide with a nearly vertical drop that promised a surge of pure adrenaline. We waited in line for what seemed like forever. Finally reaching the top, my heart pounded against my ribs, but Alex showed no fear. He was smiling widely, like a maniac. We climbed into the inflatable raft provided by the attendant, and then he gave us a push. For the next few seconds, we were a whirlwind of wind and water. The ground vanished beneath us as we rushed down the slide. I felt a blend of terror and excitement, and when we got to the bottom, the rush of water was momentarily blinding. After recovering from our initial adventure, we spent the rest of that afternoon exploring the park. We braved the wave pool, which tossed us around like rag dolls, and leisurely floated down the lazy river, basking in the sun. As hours passed by, the crowd began to thin, but Alex and I decided to try one more slide before heading home. The Aqua Twister. Unlike the others, the Aqua Twister wasn't about speed or height. It was about disorientation. It consisted of enclosed, twisting tunnels that plunged you into darkness, spun you around, then ejected you into a pool of water. "This looks awesome. I can't wait," said Alex, his eyes shining with mischief. As for myself, I was uncertain. "Are you sure? This seems a bit intense," I told him. Alex called me a chicken and assured me that it would be fun, promising that he would be there with me. I knew if I backed out, he would tell everyone that I was a coward, and I would have to face teasing all summer long. So, I swallowed my fear and agreed to go. The line was short, and before long, we were at the entrance. The attendant, who was a bored teenager, outlined the rules, and we hurried inside. The entrance was a dim tunnel, and as we stepped in, darkness enveloped us. A chill ran down my spine. I couldn't see a damn thing. "You ready?" Alex asked, his voice echoing. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, trying to sound braver than I felt. Suddenly, the ground disappeared, and we fell into darkness. The tunnel twisted and turned, spinning us around. I lost all sense of direction. All I could feel was the rush of wind and the cold, damp slide against my skin. I yelled, but my voice was swallowed by the abyss. I could hear Alex shouting too. His voice was distorted and distant. The spinning made me dizzy, and nausea surged through me. Just as abruptly as it started, the ride ended, and I was ejected into a pool of water. Gasping for breath, blinking, I tried to regain my bearings. Alex was right next to me, coughing and sputtering as well. "That was intense," he said, his voice trembling. "Intense is an understatement. I think I'm going to be sick," I replied, still catching my breath. We climbed out of the pool and rested on a nearby bench, trying to recover. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the park. The air had cooled, and the sounds of laughter and splashing had faded. I decided that I had enough of water slides for one day, though we could always return tomorrow. Alex nodded in agreement as we headed toward the exit. Our excitement had been replaced by exhaustion and unease. Passing the Aqua Twister, I couldn't resist glancing back. Its dark, foreboding entrance seemed to stare at me. We were nearing the main gate when the craziest thing happened. Frantic cries and screams erupted from the pool area. Turning around, we saw people shouting for help and pointing toward the center of the pool. Curiosity overtook us as we dashed toward the chaos. When we got to the pool's edge, we saw why everyone was panicking. A group of people were struggling in the water, their faces twisted with fear. I asked a woman nearby what was happening. In a quivering voice, she said that she didn't know, only that something was dragging people beneath the water. Alex and I exchanged looks of disbelief, then moved closer to the pool. We had to help. As we waded deeper, I felt a particular sensation tugging at my feet. Looking down, I saw the water swirling around me. Before I could react, something hot and constricting wrapped around my ankle and pulled me under. I gasped, swallowing a mouthful of water. I struggled desperately, but whatever held me was too strong, dragging me deeper down. Panic set in. I couldn't breathe, and my lungs ached. I fought with all my strength, but it was futile. I was starting to lose consciousness when, suddenly, the grip released me, and I swam to the surface, emerging and gasping for air. Alex rushed over, grabbed my hand, and pulled me over to the pool's edge, where I collapsed, coughing and sputtering. "What the hell happened?" Alex asked, his face filled with concern. In a raspy voice, I told him that something had dragged me under the water, something that was unbelievably strong. We looked back at the pool. The thrashing swimmers had reached the edge, and the water was calm again. Whatever had been pulling people down, lifeguards were clearing the pool, and people were rushing toward the exits. The park was closing early, and everyone had to leave. Alex and I blended into the crowd, trembling, our thoughts in a whirl. We didn't speak until we were outside, standing in the parking lot. "Dude, what the hell was that?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have no idea, but I never want to experience anything like this ever again. Let's get out of here." We walked home in silence, the day's events heavy on our minds. Once we got back, I took a hot shower, trying to wash the memory away. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the dark water, the swirling currents, and the shadowy figure that had grabbed my ankle. I tossed and turned. The next day, local news was filled with reports about the incident at Aqua Blast. Witnesses described seeing a bizarre whirlpool and claimed that something was dragging people under. Park officials dismissed the reports, blaming the overcrowding and panic, but Alex and I knew better. We knew that something unusual and terrifying had happened at Aqua Blast, and we vowed to never return. A few weeks later, Aqua Blast was closed indefinitely. The official reason was never clear, but I knew the truth. To this day, I still feel chills when I think back on it. It was a frightening experience that I'll never forget, and it taught me a valuable lesson. Sometimes the things that can seem the most fun can also be the most dangerous. It was a dreary Monday morning when this all began. I entered the office that day, ready to tackle another long work shift. I was just an ordinary guy, interning at a small tech company. The office was a mixture of open areas, cubicles, and a single brick room stocked with a coffee maker and vending machines. My co-workers were friendly, and I got along with most of them, except for one guy named Carl. Carl was in his late 30s and 4 years older than me. He always made me uneasy. His hair was perpetually disheveled, and he sported a scruffy beard. He wore the same untidy flannel shirts, old jeans, and black boots every day. He was highly skilled at coding, but his social skills were severely lacking. He often made nonsensical or confusing comments. During lunch, Carl usually sat in the break room, while I tried to keep my distance. But he always found a way to insert himself into my conversations. That day, as I ate lunch at my desk, Carl leaned over, his eyes wide with enthusiasm.
"Jake, did you know that the human soul departs the body for 7 minutes after death?"
I chuckled nervously, unsure how to respond. No, I wasn't aware of that," I said, hoping that he would change the subject. Instead, he launched into an elaborate tale about communicating with the dead, or spirits, whatever. I quickly finished my meal and excused myself, hurrying away before I felt like fainting or yelling at him to leave me alone. Over the next few days, Carl's odd behavior grew stranger. He was often seen whispering to himself or staring blankly at his laptop, fingers poised above the keys. Other co-workers, including the boss, began avoiding him, leaving me feeling guilty for being the only one left, still willing to engage with him. One Friday afternoon, everything changed. The office was quiet, with most people gone for the weekend. I was wrapping up some tasks when I sensed that there was someone behind me. Turning around, I nearly jumped. Carl was right there, his face much closer than I expected.
Do you believe in ghosts, Jake?
Not really, I replied softly. He smiled. It was extremely unsettling.
I believe they're everywhere, and sometimes they communicate with me.
I nodded, not really sure how to respond. Suddenly, the light above us flickered. I brushed it off as a power issue and stammered that I had to get back to work, hoping that would be the end of the conversation. As I turned back to my tasks, I heard Carl's heavy breathing before he walked away. A chill ran down my spine. Monday arrived, and things took a darker turn. I got to the office early to get a head start on some paperwork. I thought I was by myself, except for maybe my boss. Then I heard a strange noise coming from the break room. It sounded like muffled voices talking. Curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to investigate. As I crept down the quiet aisle toward the break room, that familiar dread returned. As I closed in, the voices grew louder and louder. I could distinguish one as Carl's deep tone, while the other was soft and eerie, very unnatural sounding. I was wondering what Carl was up to, and who he might have been talking to. Peering through the break room's glass door, I saw him standing alone in the corner, arms raised, murmuring quietly. I pushed open the door and asked, "Carl, are you all right?" He spun around, and his wide, frantic eyes gave him an almost otherworldly appearance.
I'm trying to reach them. They're trying to communicate with me.
Who's trying to communicate with you? I asked, backing toward the door. He ignored me, resuming his bizarre chanting. Caught between curiosity and a rising dread, I told Carl that he had to stop right now. Suddenly, the lights flickered and the air turned cold. Fear washed over me as Carl's chanting grew frantic. Then a loud crash echoed from down the hall, making me nearly leap out of my skin. "What was that?" I said, my heart racing. Carl turned to me.
They're angry. We need to listen.
I wanted to flee, but my feet felt like they were glued to the ground, holding me in place. A minute later, I snapped out of it and bolted out of the break room. Grabbing my phone from my desk, I called the police. Glancing back at the break room window, I saw that Carl had vanished, and the office became eerily silent. The cops came and swept the building, but Carl was nowhere to be seen. I spent the rest of that day on edge, glancing over my shoulder. As my other coworkers arrived, I asked one of them from marketing named Sarah, "Hey, have you seen Carl today?" "No, but he's been acting so strange lately. He left early on Friday looking pale and shaky, and I just dismissed it as his quirky personality." Something felt off to me. I couldn't shake the sense that he was in danger, or worse. It was a few days later when the situation escalated. Carl was still absent, and I couldn't stop thinking about what I saw in the break room. It was that Friday, after hours, that I returned to the office to investigate. Something was telling me that I had to be there. As I stepped inside, the lights flickered ominously. "Carl, are you here?" My voice echoed in the empty space, sending chills through my body. Heading toward the break room, my dread intensified. Suddenly I heard a clear whisper.
Help us.
It was faint, and it sounded like it was coming from the supply closet. My heart raced as I approached cautiously, my hands shaking. Is someone there? The door creaked open, and the lights flickered erratically. a stack of cardboard boxes tumbled, revealing Carl, sitting in a corner, looking terrified.
"They're trapped. I can help them,"
he murmured, not acknowledging my presence. I grabbed his arm. "Carl, we need to get the hell out of here." He turned, fear and confusion in his eyes.
"They need me, Jake."
The lights suddenly went out, plunging us into the dark. A cold breeze swept through, and a furious, commanding voice boomed.
"Don't interrupt."
Carl gasped, and terror gripped me. "It's not safe here. We have to go," I said, pulling him to his feet as the lights flickered back on. Shadow forms seemed to swirl around us like smoke. I dragged Carl out of the closet, rushing toward the exit. The whispers intensified, trying to pull us back. We burst out of the office, the cool night air hitting us as we sprinted back to the parking lot. Pausing to catch my breath, I glanced back. The office lights flickered one last time before going dark.
What just happened?
I have no idea, but we need to report this to someone. Driving home that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that these strange events were far from over. I was worried about Carl and the bizarre forces he believed in. That night taught me a very valuable lesson. Curiosity can lead to frightening places, but even so, I had a moral obligation to help Carl. I didn't want to leave him there in a state of delirium, where he would have to face these unknown horrors alone. No matter how bizarre or terrifying the situation was, I stood by my principles, and I'll do so in the future, regardless of whatever may be lurking in the shadows. There was a story on your channel some time ago about a young lady who was on vacation at a Disney resort in South Carolina, where she encountered a disturbing individual wearing a vintage Mickey Mouse mask. I want to make something perfectly clear. My experience has no connection to hers, and I'm not suggesting that it was the same person she encountered, but I have also seen someone wearing that god-forsaken mask as well. It's something that you never forget. Rumor has it that Disney discontinued that mask because it was just too terrifying for children. The fact that it was ever considered appealing to begin with remains a mystery to me. But enough pretext. Let's get into the story. I still remember this like it was yesterday, even though it happened all the way back in 2004, the year I began first grade. The first day of school always brings some excitement and nervousness, but in my opinion, nothing compares to your very first day of school, the day that you leave daycare and kindergarten behind and officially enter the public education system. For some, that alone might sound like the start of a scary story, but for me, most of my sparse memories of that day are quite pleasant. My teacher was lovely, my classmates were mostly nice, and the classroom felt like an exciting place to learn. I'd even say my first day of elementary school was fun. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the bus ride home. Since I was the only kid from my neighborhood attending that school, my bus stop was not only the last one on the route, but it also was created just for me. My parents and principal had given me very specific instructions on where it was, so I would know where to be dropped off. I also knew that one of my parents would be waiting for me at the stop to make things easier. After all, I was only 6 years old. The trouble started when we got to the second to last stop, and I was the only kid left on the bus. "Hey, you, get off the bus," the driver barked. It wasn't just the volume, but the sharp, stern tone that startled and confused me. Not only were my parents nowhere in sight, but the neighborhood looked completely unfamiliar. When I tried to explain this, the driver only got angrier. "Get off right now. or you'll never be allowed to ride the bus again." Her words filled me with dread. I was a quiet, reserved kid who hated confrontation. My father, the only driver in our family, worked downtown, and my mom wasn't comfortable letting me walk alone. The school bus would be the only way I could get to and from school. The thought of being banned from riding it on my very first day was terrifying. Scared into silence, I got off the bus without another word. I regretted it immediately as the bus drove away. Though my parents had drilled my home address into me, I navigated the world by landmarks, trees, lawn decorations, house roof colors, and even cracks in the sidewalk, but never street signs, not till I was around 10. As I took in my surroundings, the dread returned. The neighborhood was quaint and peaceful, but completely foreign to me. I was a shy, soft-spoken 6-year-old girl who was lost, terrified, and alone. Well, not entirely alone. As I made my way aimlessly down the sidewalk, with tears welling up in my eyes, I saw someone standing in the alley between two houses on my left. They were severely out of place. It was someone wearing dark clothing, a baggy jacket, and a black and white Mickey Mouse mask, its soulless eyes staring directly at me. As soon as I saw him, I burst into tears, closing my eyes. Seconds later, I heard familiar voices calling to me. It was two twin boys who rode my bus. They were a couple of grades above me. They had gotten off at the same stop and had begun to make their way back home when they heard me crying and quickly came back. I looked back to the alleyway, but the masked man was gone. "What are you looking for?" one of them asked. I saw a man wearing a mouse mask standing there just a second ago." "Well, there's no one there now. You probably just saw something because you were scared." After asking me a few more questions, they quickly came up with a plan. One of them would stay with me, while the other went home to get their dad. After a few minutes of standing there, and me nervously looking back to the now empty alleyway, a beige car pulled up beside us. The boy that stayed with me said his father would take me home, and opened the rear passenger door for me. I saw his twin brother in the back seat, gesturing for me to get in. But my worries weren't over just yet. My parents also taught me about stranger danger, and I was already shaken to my core because of what I saw in the alley. The thought of getting into a car with a man I had just met and giving him my home address made me want to cry, but I knew if I didn't, I would remain lost. That fear was the only reason I got into the car and told him where I lived. The drive was much shorter than I expected. I had been dropped off just a couple of blocks from my street. Still shaking and full of adrenaline, I felt no relief. It wasn't until I was home and safely in my grandfather's embrace that I could finally relax. To say my parents were furious would be an understatement. The school took the incident seriously, and as soon as they found a replacement, the driver was fired. Neither I nor anyone else had another experience like that again. My claims about seeing someone in a Mickey Mouse mask were basically dismissed as a hallucination. Looking back, I sometimes feel embarrassed, especially since I was only a 10-minute walk from my house. Then I remember I was just 6 years old when that driver threatened to ban me from the bus. I was, and still am, tall for my age, so she might have thought I was older. But no child deserves to be spoken to like that, especially on their first day of school. I'm forever grateful to those boys for caring enough to help. Otherwise, who knows what might have happened to me that day. For years I've questioned if I actually saw a man wearing that Mickey Mouse mask that day. I suppose it's possible that it could have been my imagination, but I think it's more likely that it was someone trying to break into one of those houses. But to a lost, frightened little girl, it might as well have been the devil himself standing there.
Halloween night had a strange energy that year, even before anything actually went wrong. It was almost the way the air carried that sharp bite of fall, the way every porch light seemed dead, making more shadows than actual light. My little brother and sister were thrilled, faces painted, plastic pumpkins swinging from their arms, darting up the driveways with that sugar rush excitement only kids can muster up. Me, I was 19, way too old to be out here, and yet here I was, carrying the mantle of the responsible one. My mom had asked me to tag along since Dad was working late, and she didn't trust the neighborhood enough to send the kids off alone. I graduated that year, supposed to be figuring college or a job out, something. Instead, I was walking 2 kids in costumes down the streets that I'd trick-or-treated myself a decade earlier. Now, don't get me wrong, I love them, I'd do anything for them. But being 19 and stuck babysitting on a Halloween night felt like one more reminder that I hadn't gotten my own life together yet. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. A buddy of mine was close by, down one of the side streets. He had this little baggie for me, nothing major. I'd been looking forward to it all week. Just a quick handoff, maybe share a joint, nothing crazy, 5 minutes tops. The kids, they'll be fine. They had friends in their group, and every house on the street has a porch light glowing. It couldn't be any safer in my mind. "All right, you two stick to this block, okay?" I said, crouching down to look them eye to eye. My sister's vampire fangs had slipped down to where she grinned, and my brother was busy adjusting the mask on his cheap Batman costume. Both of them nodded back at me. "Don't go past that corner. I'll be right back." They didn't question it. Candy was calling. So they bolted off toward the next house, already comparing loot from their pumpkins. I slid down that side street, my steps quick to get this over with. I wanted nothing more than to just get baked. The noise of kids laughing, the porch chimes rattling would grow quieter with each yard that I passed. The street lights thinned out here. The glow of jack-o'-lanterns gave way to more shadows. It was amazing how fast the atmosphere would shift when you left that main drag. Just 1 block over and it felt like another world completely. That itch in me, the need for something reckless, something just mine, pulled me along though. I felt guilty, sure, but I told myself again and again it's not that big of a deal. I'll be back before the kids will even notice. My mom will never know. Nobody would except me, my buddy, and the weed. I spotted my friend near the end of the lane, leaning up against a half-busted picket fence with his hoodie pulled up. The street was quiet. The sounds of crickets were filling in the gaps between our words. If I'd known what was waiting in the dark, just beyond that fence, I never would have gone there. He handed me that little baggie like it was nothing. We barely had enough time to laugh about sneaking it past my folks before the brush beside us erupted. We never really stood a chance. Something exploded out of the shadows. He came fast, really fast, like he'd been coiled there waiting for the moment to strike. 1 second it was just us, leaves rustling. The next there was a full-grown man barreling right into us. He didn't yell words, he screamed, an animal shriek that ripped through me worse than the impact of his actual body, and the man sounded absolutely terrified. My friend hit the dirt, the baggie flying. I staggered back, arms up instinctively, and then his weight slammed into me again. His face was now inches from mine, eyes glassy, wild, pupils blown out wide. I couldn't even see the color around him. His mouth was foaming. Spit sprang across my cheek as he clawed at my jacket. I shoved him, but he came back twice as strong. His fists weren't controlled punches, they were frantic. He scratched, he bit at the air like a rabid dog. My buddy scrambled up and grabbed the guy by the shoulders, trying to drag him back. For a second, I thought we'd actually get him off of me, but then the man twisted, swinging his elbows and catching my friend across the jaw, so hard that I heard his teeth clack. "What the fuck, man?" my buddy yelled, holding his face. I didn't waste time. I ran my shoulder into that guy's chest, shoving with everything I had. He stumbled backward into the brush, legs tangling up in the branches, and then just like that, he was gone. He disappeared so quickly it was as if it never even happened. I stood there trying to catch my breath. My hands shook as I looked over at my friend. Blood was trickling from his split lip, his hoodie ripped at the shoulder. "What the hell was that?" he said. I couldn't answer because there wasn't an answer. Then, more sounds hit us, screams. Not the wild animal screaming of the man, but the terrified broken sound of children crying out. Shit, my brother, my sister. Every ounce of blood in me immediately turned to ice. Shit, I whispered, then I was running. We tore down the lane, shoes pounding the asphalt. I could hear my buddy behind me swearing under his breath, but all I could think about was those screams. Every second counted. Every step felt like I wasn't fast enough. My friend and I were pretty decent-sized dudes, even at 19. It took both of us, everything we had to get that dude off of us. My kids' siblings, they didn't stand a chance, and in my mind, they were already dead. We rounded the corner and I saw them, my siblings struggling in the man's grip. He had them both, arms like iron bands around their small bodies, dragging them toward a ditch that ran alongside the road. Their candy bags were overturned, chocolate bars and lollipops littering the ground. I screamed at him to let go, and the man didn't even turn his head. He snarled some kind of weird, awful sound, tightening his grip on my brother, dragging him down into the weeds. My sister clawed at his arms, her fangs clattering out of her mouth as he screamed out for me. I didn't think anymore, I just threw myself at him. We crashed into the ditch together. My shoulders screamed with pain as it hit the dirt, but adrenaline kept me moving. I grabbed fistfuls of filthy shirts, yanking him off my siblings, punching wildly. My friend was there too, swinging a rock that he picked up, smacking the guy across the back of the head. The man didn't stop. If anything, he got worse. He clawed at me, fingernails raking against my cheek. I felt the sting of blood, but I still didn't stop. I scrambled free, sobbing while my brother kicked the man in the ribs with the force of sheer panic. I told them to run, to get back, go. But they didn't. They hovered close, too terrified to leave me. The guy lunged again, teeth bared now, like he was gonna bite me. I ducked and drilled him in the ribs. It wasn't a lights-out hit or anything, but it was enough to check him. He stopped and actually gasped out loud, grabbing his stomach, acting human for a brief moment. For a brief moment he stood there, chest heaving, eyes bulging, drool and blood slicking his chin. His body trembled like he couldn't contain the madness within it. And just like that, he bolted, tore off into the woods, crashing through the branches, his screams echoing long after he was gone. The silence that followed was worse than the actual fight. My siblings were clinging to me, both sobbing, their costumes torn, faces streaked with tears and dirt. My brother's voice cracked when he said, "He was gonna take us, he was gonna..." "Don't." I cut him off, pulling them both close. "He's gone, okay? I promise you're okay now, you're okay." But the truth hit me. They weren't okay. I wasn't okay. None of us were. But I guess we were alive. We stood there in the wreckage, candy crushed under feet, the night around us heavy with the weight of what just took place. My friend was leaning up against a fence, pale, blood still seeping from his lip, muttering "Jesus Christ" over and over. "We're going home, now." "Yeah." "You got a phone?" "No, man." "All right, well, walk with us. Let's stay together." Every step we took felt like we were walking through some kind of enemy territory, shadows pressing in on all sides. I kept my siblings in front of me, my buddy trailing behind. I didn't care about the weed, didn't care about my split cheek or the blood on my hands. All I cared about was getting them home. Every rustle of the leaves, every crack of a branch, I was sure he was coming back for us. My little brother clutched my hand so tight that it cut off my circulation. My sister walked on my other side, pressing tight against me, her plastic pumpkin swinging empty and broken. My buddy limped behind, spitting blood into the gutter, glancing over his shoulder every couple of steps. By the time my house came into view, I thought my heart was going to give out. We stumbled inside, slammed the door, and locked it twice. My brother started crying again, loud, heavy sobs. My sister wasn't much better. I tried to sound calm, but my voice shook when I said it's okay. We're home. You're safe. My parents' face went white when they saw us. My mom grabbed my sister, checking her over, while Dad got on the phone with the police. I kept saying the same thing to them. Some guy, he came out of nowhere. He tried to take them. But the words would get caught in my throat. The cops rolled up quick, and for once, sirens were the best sound I'd ever heard. They fanned out through the neighborhood, flashlights sweeping throughout the woods. Less than an hour later, they came back with them. I only caught a brief glimpse as they pushed him into the back of the cruiser. His shirt was torn, his arms were scratched to ribbons from all the brush, his face was streaked with blood and spit. He was still screaming, words jumbled, thrashing like some kind of man possessed. One of the officers shook his head and muttered, "Hopped up on God knows what. Lucky you kids got away, huh?" Lucky, that's what they called it, but luck didn't explain the way his eyes looked, those black pits void of reason. Luck didn't really explain how strong he'd been or the way his shrieks cut through the night. That incident ended up defining the rest of the year. My siblings would sleep in our parents' bed for weeks. Me? I'd lie awake, staring up at the ceiling, hearing phantom footsteps outside, knowing now that monsters don't really have to wear masks on Halloween. They're just people. The Autumn Festival was definitely something our town lived for. One night a year when Main Street didn't feel like an actual ghost town. The courthouse steps glowed underneath orange string lights. The smell of cider hung in the air, and every shop front had pumpkins propped up in the windows, scarecrows left and right. You could almost trick yourself into thinking that we were part of some postcard perfect New England hamlet, instead of a place where the Dairy Queen had gone under. Not once, but twice. I was stuck running the ring toss booth with 3 of my friends, our quote-unquote volunteer hours for National Honor Society. Mostly, it meant leaning up against the counter, heckling kids who couldn't throw a plastic ring over a 2-liter bottle. The prizes were dollar store junk, but the little ones went wild for them. I pretended to care because, well, that's what you do when you're 17 and don't want to look like a complete waste of space. The street was crowded, families with strollers, couples with styrofoam bowls of chili, the marching band hammering out some screechy version of Sweet Caroline. Booths and vendors lined up on both sides of the road. Cotton candy, face painting, raffle tickets for a quilt made by the Methodist ladies. Above it all, paper lanterns bobbed in the cool October wind. For a while, it was all background noise, the normal. And then I took notice of something. 2 men, I guess they could have been kids, coming down the sidewalk in stiff lockstep. Both wore these crude paper mache masks, which were uncommon. Bulbous noses, lopsided grins, paint smeared on like clown makeup. At first I assumed it had to be part of the festival, right? But nobody else's costume matched up with these guys. They stood out in a way that made me feel very uncomfortable. They're really tall as well, eerily so. Even from across the street where I stood, I could tell something was off about their arms, the way they swung low as hell, hands almost dangling to their knees. Their bodies were narrow, compressed, like somebody had stretched them from head to toe. I immediately felt the hair on my neck stand up, though I couldn't have told you why. When I told this story to a college friend, he told me that I experienced the uncanny valley effect. A woman and child passed by our booth right then, a mom with tired eyes holding her daughter's hand. The girl was carrying a candy apple bigger than her fist, red glaze catching the lamplight. She laughed, tugging at her mom to stop near the petting zoo. Normal, ordinary, safe. What the American experience is all about. The masked men slowed as they passed, their crude grins frozen on us now. Nobody else seemed to notice, just me standing there with the ring in my hand, my throat now gone dry. Something about them pressed on me, but my instincts were telling me to run. My buddy next to me laughed, said they looked like scarecrows on stilts, but I kept watching until they disappeared off into the crowd. Okay, I'm imagining things, it's Halloween, whatever I'm doing, it's all in my head. Seeing them melt off with normal people was a huge relief. Actually, as it meant, well, they were probably normal, just leaning hard into the whole Halloween vibe, The band took a break and the PA whined. People were drifting toward chili and cider, and we kept the rings moving and the line honest. The mother and the girl came back over. The girl's candy apple was half eaten, red chips of sugar stuck to her fist. They crossed the alley between the barber shop and the antique place. A string of lights sagged above it. Half the bulbs were dead, so they were caught in some kind of darkness. Then, 10 steps behind them though, the 2 masked men were altering their course the same way, and they turned like a rolling tide. You see that?" I asked. Hayes squinted. The sheriff stood by the dunk tank, towel over his shoulder, laughing with the volunteers. The mother glanced back, tightening her grip on the girl, and started to move faster. Then the tall guys went turbo and quickly closed the distance in a second. They flanked the girls and had them cornered before I knew it. I vaulted the booth and ran. I heard Hayes swear and then followed me. It smelled like candy and popcorn, which was comforting in the moment, but my body was running on pure adrenaline. It was this really weird contrast in the moment. They had the woman up against the wall, her arm across the child, one man leaning up close. When I got closer, the mask wasn't this sloppily crafted thing. It was smooth and chalky, hairline cracks spidering that painted grin. Not a single inch of skin was exposed anywhere, despite all the long, creepy limbs. "Hey, back off," I said. They ignored me. The second man shifted so he could block the view. Hayes quickly grabbed up a folding chair and made like he was going to take a swing. One of the creeps turned around, but really only turning his head all the way around, almost like an owl would, and I couldn't believe what I was watching. Hayes then swung for real, wrestler, no-nonsense kid, and flecks fell from the mask like powder. Under it was the same paste, impacted now, like that's what his face was actually made of. I hooked the girls and hauled off. They folded into me, heavy with fear. The man's hand slid off the mother's shoulders and left this gray smear on her blouse. The guy blocking us snapped this long arm at Hayes and caught his wrist. I heard Hayes scream. The elbow flexed and hyperextended, whatever you call it, and Hayes was reeling with pain. I kicked the man's shin, and I mean I fully blasted him. I heard him grunt and he let Hayes go. Then all of us retreated back to that ring toss booth. We pushed back into Maine. The crowd turned toward the noise now. A dad in a ball cap ran up with his hands balled up. A vendor grabbed this metal ladle like a weapon. Our principal then charged through, palms out, barking orders. Soon, a little posse of defenders had formed and started to circle those two guys. The tall men moved in these short, rapid steps that ate up the distance quickly. It was almost like watching crabs walk. One of them hit the deputy who had sprinted over from the dunk tank. He knocked the officer into the bushes and then jumped on top of him, blows raining down. I was closest. I started to move in, which ended up being a big mistake. The second tall man slapped me in the ribs unbelievably hard. I can't even explain how. Pain then flared up and I doubled over. It was almost like getting hit with a brick. Hayes hauled me up and dragged me back to the booth, and the others cut in and circled. The little girl was now sobbing, and the mother kept whispering to her that it's okay. People flooded the alley and froze when they saw the faces. They didn't have weapons or anything. It was just how creepy they looked up close. People were calling for them to freeze, hold up, stand down, but nothing was getting through to them. They resorted to threats and still didn't get any kind of response. A folding chair then arced through the air, pinged off one of the masked men. The guy didn't stumble an inch though, and they moved toward the park end of Maine where the pines stood tall and dark. A plastic perimeter fence ran the end of the line, and the men didn't jump it. They slipped through the gaps, just off the ground, bodies flattening and sliding. The fence didn't make a sound as they passed through it. A deputy fired off into the tree line, a shot that cracked and vanished into the pines. Then, noise rushed back. A generator stuttered. People screamed. We couldn't believe this idiot had just discharged a firearm, but after seeing that, I guess I don't really blame him. The mother sank to the curb, cradling her baby. Her blouse had that gray streak that flaked when she moved. The sheriff took everything in and barked out orders. Cones went up, police tape, radios. He tried drunks in masks, and it sounded weak. The deputy had gotten beaten down and didn't make eye contact with anybody. The statements had come in. They were tall and local. They weren't human. The mask wouldn't come off. Somebody swore they heard a laugh and it sounded robotic, and others said there'd been no sound at all when they came in. It had everybody on this Men in Black thing for a while. EMTs would ice Hayes' elbow and taped it up. They checked me and pressed a cold pack to my ribs. They wrapped the girl up in a foil blanket and coaxed her into sipping a bottle of water. She kept staring at the alley mouth, eyes blown wide like somebody had seen the other side of reality. By the time they got lights and bodies ready to search, the pines had already swallowed up any sign of them. The perimeter fence looked intact unless you peered up close, where a faint gray dust would paint some of the gaps. The sheriff closed the festival down early, pack up, lock it down, post cars. He ordered more lights, officers, and volunteers. People would nod along, but it was really bizarre to watch. I could tell nobody really knew what to do, so they were primed to buy into anything. We left in groups and I walked home with Hayes and some other kids. My ribs still kind of burned. Hayes kept rubbing his elbow as if checking whether the joint would hold up for him. At home, I scrubbed that grave from my palms until the water ran clean. There was a weird chalky smell everywhere that they touched me. To my knowledge, nobody ever saw them again. The town added patrols and light. The festival committee bought metal detectors. Nobody really knew why. The alley got a no loitering sign. People would try to call it a prank or a stunt, but I don't think it really stuck. Even the jokers walk straighter down the middle of the sidewalk now. Nobody wanted to get blamed for it. The sheriff stood in front of the courthouse steps the next morning, told the local paper it had been a couple of mass drunks, hopped up and looking for trouble. That was the official line, and he stuck to it. But everybody who had actually been there, the mothers clutching their kids, the dads who had charged in and been thrown aside, the high schoolers nursing their bruises, we all knew better. They seen the way those men moved, the way the masks cracked without coming off, the way the festival completely fell apart. Nobody said it out loud, but nobody bought the story either. And from then on, the festival committee approved floodlights at every corner. Volunteers would patrol, bag checks at the gates. Security tripled for every parade, every fair, and every market. And I guess, what else can you really do?
When I was around 22 years old, I had a scary encounter while staying at a hotel for a job. Around 2010, I was working for a traveling photography group that took church directory photos. Each photographer drove separately from all over the place. So I was in Harlan, Iowa at the time. I was staying at a hotel along with other photographers who joined me. I believe there were 4 of us, 2 guys, a girl, and myself. One morning, I went down to breakfast and was watching TV in the hotel breakfast area. Someone was also down there nearby. A guy. When he looked at me, I said, "Good morning," as I do whenever I go, just to be friendly. He said it back and we just had a polite exchange. Something you would do with a stranger you never thought you would see again. He mentioned he was staying there with his team for a construction job. I go to leave and I say something very casual like, "Well, have a good one, see you later." And he said something like, "Could we hang later?" I didn't think anything of it and just brushed it off like, yeah, maybe. I don't remember if it was the same day or not, but as I didn't work until 11 a.m., I decided to go take a nap since I didn't sleep well the night before. We tend to work from like 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. give or take depending on the size of the church, etc. While laying in my room, I kept receiving phone calls to my room phone. I wasn't used to getting calls like that ever, so I just picked up. I would say hello, but nobody would answer. After a few times, I eventually just took the receiver off and placed it beside the phone so it would stop ringing. When it was time to get up and leave, I left my room and I saw the guy was there in the hall. I waved casually, still not thinking anything of it. He asked where I was going and I said I had to go to work. My friend then showed up, one of the female photographers, and I went with her to her car as I was going to ride with her to the church. I told her about getting strange phone calls and she mentioned that she did as well. Later that night, there was a thunderstorm. My photographer group and I stood by the hotel lobby door watching the lightning. It was thundering and extremely dark. There were chances for tornadoes, so we were keeping tabs with each other. Eventually, I go to my room for the night and I hear a knock on my door. I didn't really want to answer it. However, I did, cracking the door to see who it was. It was the guy. He talked about how I said we could hang out, and I told him I was too tired after working all day long and I needed to sleep. I then shut the door. Now, I can't remember if this was the next morning or still night, but I recall him knocking again, but I wouldn't answer. I pretended to either be out or sleeping. I called my mom and started talking to her. I told her what was happening, and although I was scared, I almost acted like I wasn't when speaking with her. Then suddenly, I had a weird feeling. I whispered to my mom, "Mom, hold on a second. I need to check something." I then tiptoed as quietly over to my room door as possible. I look out the peephole and I see him. I then see him turn his head to my door as if he was listening for something. My heart started to race. I then saw him move to the side. You know how the wall sometimes goes in for the doors, so there's like an indentation in the hallway for each room? Well, he goes to the wall away from the room that juts out. I think he thought he was hiding because he would try to lean his head around the corner of the jut-out portion as if he was listening for something. I walked to the furthest side of my room quietly and whispered to my mom about how I'm scared. I called the front desk to complain like my mom suggested. I can't remember if I also texted my friend or called her, but she also complained to the front desk about the various phone calls she received. Eventually, we were given new rooms, and the construction group manager was told by the hotel about one of his guys, and that creepy guy was told to stay away from us. I even told some of the church people about that situation, and they all said if we needed to stay with them, we could. All very nice, but still strangers to me, and I didn't trust anyone at that point. I'm not sure what happened to him, as I didn't see him after that. I was a little jealous of my friend because she ended up with a hot tub in her room, and I didn't, but it was fine. However, after that, I was way more aware and careful with who I talked to and what I said. I'm a 31-year-old female states away from home on a business trip. About an hour ago, around 8:30 p.m. here, I had just gotten back to my room from a work dinner. I heard shuffling in the hallway and peeked out of the peephole. I saw a figure seemingly outside the room to the left of mine, looking outward. They were knocking the lighting and said twice quickly, "Hello, hello?" Then it sounded like the door opened and closed. I was like, okay, they must have forgotten what room they were in or something and someone let them in. I walk back to the main part of my room and I hear shuffling again. I look out again and see a figure. Can't really make out what the person looks like, but I see them on the other side of my room this time. And again hear light knocking and, "Hello, hello?" Now I'm starting to get a weird spidery sense of like, what the hell's going on here? I see the figure leave and think, okay, that was really weird. Then I again start hearing shuffling. I start walking toward the hotel room door and hear a light knock on what sounds to be my room door yet again, and I hear, "Hello, hello?" And immediately after someone attempts to open my door. Thank God I had the cross latch pulled over, not the deadbolt though. My heart stopped as I stood there and watched the door hit the latch and fall back shut. I called the front desk and informed them that someone had just tried entering my room and I'm not staying with anyone. The front desk attendant just replied back with, "That's really strange. I don't have any housekeeping up there." To which I replied, "Okay, well, that's very concerning. Can you please send someone up to check around?" The attendant then replied, "Well, there's no manager on duty." To which I asked if I should call the police instead because I was very worried, as I then started to cry a bit. She then replied that I should definitely do what I thought I needed to do. I hung up and cried for a bit, not really sure what to do. I didn't want to ask for another room because I'm too scared to leave now. 10 minutes later, the hotel phone starts ringing. I was honestly feeling really scared to answer, but I did. It was the front desk attendant, and she said the police were going to be coming to my room, and she didn't want me to panic when I heard someone knock on my door. I said okay and hung up. I just sat there and thought, how do I know if this is legit? Whoever tried to access my room had a key, otherwise how else would the door have actually opened? A few minutes later, as expected, I heard a knock. I looked out the peephole and saw 2 male officers. I didn't ask to see their IDs, which in hindsight probably would have been the smart thing to do, but I was so shaken up and not really thinking. I opened the door and they asked what was going on. I told them all that I explained above. They said it was good that I had the cross latch pulled over because the door would open if not. I then responded, "It's a hotel. What do you mean? What's the point of the access card then?" And wiggled the handle. We were in the hallway talking with my door open just for context. Then they took a pause and were like, "Oh, it automatically locks?" Again, I'm like, yeah, it's a hotel." So then they had me shut the door and open it with the key to test it. Sure enough, it didn't open without the access card. They then said that it was probably housekeeping. I then responded that the front desk attendant told me there was no housekeeping up there when I called. Plus, it was 8:30 p.m. Why would housekeeping be coming by at that time unless I had requested someone to come by? Plus, I noticed housekeeping had already been done during the day because my trash was emptied and the dirty towel was gone. They immediately told me that they thought it was housekeeping and not to worry, but if anything else happened or I felt unsafe to call them. They also said that if I wanted to change rooms, they were sure the hotel would accommodate this. I said okay while crying, and they left. Now I'm sitting in my room crying, laying under the covers of my clothes. I'm sure I won't sleep tonight. I'm also too afraid to change rooms because I don't want to leave this room. I have the cross latch pulled over and the deadbolt locked. I mean, I think I'm safe. Am I being paranoid? Was it probably really just housekeeping? Should I be doing something different? Update. I'm home safe and promptly came down with a nasty bug, slowly crawling out of it. I'm really glad that I followed my gut and reacted the way I did to do what I could to stay safe. I was able to speak with the manager the next day when she came in at 11 a.m. Unfortunately, the response from her was really disappointing, just like the night shift front desk clerk and the morning shift front desk clerks when I checked out. Needless to say, I will never stay in this hotel again, and I will be avoiding this large chain as a whole. So this happened about 7 months ago. I was visiting San Diego for job interviews and staying in my favorite hotel in Sorrento Mesa. For a background, I'm a 40-year-old man and a pretty big guy. I'm 6'1" and a former strip club bouncer. Now, on to the weirdness. On my third night, I was up pretty late after hanging out with some old friends after my interviews. I got back to the hotel around 2 a.m. with some Sonny's Donuts. After eating a few, drinking a few more, and watching South Park post-COVID, I decided to have a smoke before going to bed. This made it now around 3 a.m. So I go downstairs, walk out front to the smoking area by the fountain, but there's another couple who are also staying at the hotel already there. I didn't want to impose, so I decided to just walk around the outside parts of the hotel while I smoked. I walked around the pool, the barbecue area, the basketball courts, and then started back for the side door. As I did, a black sedan drove up alongside me and stopped. The window rolled down and a tiny Asian woman asked if I knew how to get out of the parking lot and back to the street. Now from there, when she asked me, this was literally in a straight line about 150 feet in front of her, so I thought she was either drunk or just blind. So I just politely said yes, just keep going straight, and then turn left at the tree. She then asked me if I could get in the car and show her. Now again, I'm a former strip club bouncer, and this woman looked very much like the Walmart alley wonk. There was absolutely no intimidation factor whatsoever, but for some reason, I instantly felt uneasy. Again, it was literally right in front of her. She could see the road. Also, the windows were all tinted far more than they should have been, and I honestly couldn't tell if anyone else was in the car. I used the smoking as an excuse to not get in the car, but she said she didn't mind and gave me a very creepy smile. I politely declined, and again pointed out that the road was literally right there, so I'd just be walking back in 5 seconds anyway. She again asked me if I would get in and show her. This was feeling like a weird kid/ice cream truck situation. I mean, guys, really, how often do decently good-looking women just drive up and ask you to get in their car at 3 a.m. in a hotel parking lot? I mean, how often does anyone ask a big bearded guy to just hop on in the car under these circumstances? Nothing about this was right. Again, I politely declined as I finished my smoke, and was luckily already standing right at the hotel side door when all of this started, so I just went in. The woman just drove off as she rolled up the window, right exactly to the exit she asked me to show her to. So I told the front desk about it, and they said they'd keep an eye out, but I'm quite sure nothing was ever done or came of it. Just one of those things that really makes me wonder, what the hell did she want me in the car for so badly? A pretty man I'm not, so it had to just be some kind of scam. I just wonder exactly how much danger I was really in. When I first moved to New York City, I thought the hardest part would be finding an apartment. Turns out that was the easy part. The hard part was learning how to survive here, how to blend in, move fast, speak up, and not let people take advantage of you. And especially as a young woman. I'm 23 years old and I had started working at the Madison Hotel 3 months ago. It's a medium-sized place tucked in between office buildings and coffee shops in Midtown. Not fancy, but not cheap either. It gets a lot of business travelers, tourists, and sometimes people who look like they have money but don't act like it. My job is at the front desk. I work the morning shift, which means I'm usually up by 5:30 a.m. and on my feet before the sun rises. I wear a navy blazer with a name tag, pull my curly hair into a bun, and try to smile even when I don't feel like it. The job's alright. It's steady and I like meeting people from all over. Most of the guests are nice. Some are rude. A few are weird. I learned to handle all of them the same way. Politely, professionally, and with just enough distance to protect myself. But I really wasn't ready for William. He walked in on a Tuesday morning. I remember the exact day because it was raining, and he shook water off his umbrella right into the carpet. He wore a long gray coat, black gloves, and carried a brown leather briefcase that looked expensive. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with silver-streaked hair and sharp features. Mid-50s, I guessed. "Checking in," he said, setting the briefcase on the counter. "My name's William. I found his reservation. 3 nights, king bed, breakfast included. Welcome to the Madison, Mr. William. You're in room 914, I said. Elevators are to your right. He didn't leave right away. "You're new here," he said. I blinked. "I am. I just started recently." "You're doing great," he said, smiling. "It's nice to see a friendly face in this city." I thanked him and went back to typing. He finally took his keycard and walked away. That should have been it, but he came back down later that day asking for recommendations. Restaurants, museums, places to escape the noise. I gave him a few suggestions. Again, he lingered. The next morning, he brought me a coffee. "I thought you might need this," he said. I was surprised. Guests didn't usually do that. I thanked him, though something about it made me uncomfortable. Still, I didn't want to be rude. Each day after that, he found a reason to come to the desk. Sometimes he asked about the weather. Sometimes he just made small talk. He always tried to turn it personal. "You from here? Got a boyfriend? What do you do when you're not behind the desk?" I kept my answer short. He didn't take the hint. By the 3rd day, he was waiting in the lobby in the mornings before his meetings. He would be reading a paper, watching people, and watching me. "I really like watching people," he once told me. "You can learn so much about them just by observing." I smiled tight-lipped. "Is that so?" "Sure," he said, sipping his coffee. "I've already learned a lot about you, Jessica." That made my stomach twist. I told my coworker Maria. She wrinkled her nose. "That's not normal," she said. "Please be careful." When William checked out the 4th day, I breathed easier. He came to the desk, suitcase rolling behind him. "I'll be back soon," he said. I hoped he was just being polite. I was wrong. 2 days later, he returned. He wasn't a guest this time. Just walked in and stood at the counter. "Hi again," he said. "Miss me?" I blinked. "Can I help you with something?" "I just wanted to say hello," he said, grinning. I was nearby. Thought I'd stop in. I forced a smile. "Sir, I'm working right now." He then leaned in slightly. "You don't seem happy to see me," he said. "I'm just busy," I told him. He left but came back the next day, then 2 days after that, sometimes to just sit in the lobby. Other times he brought gifts, tea, a notebook, a scarf. I never accepted them, but he'd leave them on the desk and walk away. I stopped being polite. I started avoiding eye contact. He noticed. One afternoon, I caught him waiting outside. I left through the side door, heart pounding. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking the hallway through the peephole in my apartment. It got worse. One Saturday, I saw him on the platform at my train station. He didn't say anything, just stood there at the other end, watching me. I rode 3 extra stops and walked home on a different day. The next day, I had told my manager, David. He was concerned but unsure of what to do. "He's not a guest here anymore," he said. "We could ask him to leave if he shows up again, but unless he threatens you." He paused. I felt helpless, so I started documenting everything. Dates, times, what he said, where I saw him. I kept the gifts as evidence. The final straw came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was working the desk and William walked in like he owned the place. "Jessica, we need to talk," he said. I stood up. "No, we don't. You need to leave." He stepped closer. "I care about you. I think you feel the same." My hands were shaking. I picked up the phone and dialed NYPD. I then told him, "You need to leave now." He stared at me, stunned. Then he laughed. "You're overreacting." "No," I said loud and clear. "I'm not." 2 officers arrived within 10 minutes. William, of course, tried to play it cool, acting like it was all a misunderstanding, but I showed them the log, the notes, the gifts. One officer asked if I wanted to file a report. "Yes," I said. They escorted him out. It wasn't dramatic, but it was final. William hasn't come back since. Some nights I still feel nervous walking home. I still glance over my shoulder, but each day I feel a little stronger. Working at the front desk, I've learned how to smile when I don't want to, how to be polite when someone doesn't deserve it, and how to say no when someone crosses the line. Most of all, I've learned that keeping quiet doesn't keep you safe. Next time I'll speak up sooner. It's been about a year since I called the police on William. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. Other times it feels just like last week. I still remember his face, the way he looked at me like I was something he owned. That look still shows up in my dreams. But life is better now, a lot better. After everything that happened, I decided I needed a change. I quit my job at the hotel 3 months after the incident. I couldn't sit behind that front desk anymore. Every time the doors opened, I felt a jolt of fear. I'd scanned the lobby for him. For weeks, I kept expecting him to come back. He never did, but the fear stayed with me. Quiet, heavy, sitting in my chest like a stone. I moved apartments too. Nothing fancy, just a small studio in Queens. I like it there. It's quieter and my neighbors are friendly. There's a little grocery store around the corner and a park where I walk in the evenings. It's really peaceful in a way Manhattan never was. I started seeing a therapist after I moved. At first, I didn't really want to go. I didn't think I needed it. But talking to someone really helped. I realized I was still carrying so much fear, anger, and shame. She told me that none of it was my fault, and I think finally I believe her. I now work at a bookstore. It's a small place locally owned with warm lights and shelves that go up to the ceiling. The owner, Dana, is kind and funny, and she treats me like a person, not just an employee. I get to help people find stories they'll love. I get to talk about books, drink tea behind the counter, and feel safe, and I never have to wear a name tag again. Sometimes I think about who I was back then. The girl behind the front desk trying to stay polite, trying to not cause trouble. I really wish I could go back and tell her that it's really okay to speak up. It's okay to protect yourself. That being nice to someone doesn't mean you owe them anything. I still check over my shoulder when I walk home. I keep my phone in my hand. I double lock my door every night. That part of me might never go away. I've accepted that. But I'm not scared all the time now. I'm stronger. I'm more careful, yes. But I'm also more sure of myself. I know what I will and won't allow. I know how to set boundaries. And I know that if anyone ever tries to cross them again, I'll be ready. William took something from me. A sense of ease, maybe. A bit of trust in the world. But he didn't take me. I'm still here. I'm still living. And finally, I feel like I'm in control of my own life again.
I'm not the kind of person who chases chaos. I like schedules, clean bathrooms, defined plans. But my husband Barry's a little looser with things. He'd pack a bag the morning of a flight, if I let him. But he's always been respectful of my needs for order. That's what made this whole trip feel like such a slap. We weren't flying cross-country or off-grid camping. Literally just a 3-hour drive out of the city, a little town built around a couple of lakes and creeks. The kind of place you forget existed until you scroll past some kind of aerial drone shot on social media and think to yourself, yeah, I could use a long weekend. So we did it the right way. Barry picked the destination. I booked the place. One of those Airbnbs that looked a little too perfect. Bright white interior, Edison bulb lighting, and a fire pit in the backyard. It said it was walking distance to the river. Sounds good. I cross-checked the references, verified the host profile, and made sure the lockbox code had come through properly. The booking confirmation said it had been recently cleaned and was fully reset for our arrival. That was the last phrase they used, reset, like we were loading into some digital hotel room and didn't remember the last guest. The drive-in was easy, mostly 2-lane roads and flat farmland broken up by little clusters of trees. There were actual cows out there. We stopped at this diner around 15 minutes from the house and had soup and grilled cheese, like we were retirees, just to buy ourselves time until the official check-in window had arrived. When we finally pulled up into the neighborhood, it was a lot quieter than I expected it to be. No kids on bikes, nobody out mowing their lawn or washing their car, and the house itself sat at the far end of the cul-de-sac, boxed in by tall hedges and a rickety wooden fence in the backyard. The first thing that I noticed was the car. Not the one we drove in with, but the other one parked at the curb. Sleek, silver, clearly newer than anything else on that street. The hood was dusted over though, and pine needles were stuck to the windshield like nobody had even bothered to move it in days. I remember saying, "Do you think somebody's still here?" Barry just shrugged and got out to stretch. I didn't like that. I don't shrug things off like that either. I'd triple check a locked door before bed if I heard a single creak from the HVAC. I pulled up the app and clicked through the reservation. Everything looked right. Dates, address, check-in instructions. I even had a backup email from the host with a note about the key being inside the lockbox. Still, I called customer service just to be sure, and after a brief hold, the woman on the line told me everything had been confirmed. The host had supposedly cleared the place out earlier in the week, and sometimes people just leave their cars behind if they get picked up. Barry was already halfway to the porch by the time I hung up my phone. The lockbox clicked open without any kind of fight. Inside was a single brass key, old school, a little tarnished around the ridges. Barry held it up like he just won a prize, and then slipped it into the knob. The front door creaked inward, revealing a tastefully decorated living room, neutral tones, abstract wall art, and one of those fake fireplaces with glowing logs. It looked like it was designed to look clean, without any kind of personality. And at first glance, it did look exactly like the pictures I saw before. Still, I stepped in slowly. The air wasn't stale exactly, but it wasn't fresh either. Like somebody had opened up all the windows earlier in that day and then shut them again just before we arrived. Barry walked in, called out a friendly hello, like we were visiting old friends or something. Of course, there was no answer, just the gentle hum of a ceiling fan and the faint click of a wall clock. We brought in our bags and cooler, moving room from room. Kitchen, dining area, guest room, and bathroom. It all looked fine. I kept waiting for something to jump out though. Clothes on the floor, dishes in the sink, a door that wouldn't open. But it was quiet. But there was just something about it, something gnawing at me. The staging felt far too perfect, like it had been reconstructed, not just cleaned. But I tried to shake the thought. Barry lugged the cooler into the kitchen while I wandered down the hallway. He called for me a minute later, voice sharp. Babe, you gotta see this. I came back and found him standing with the fridge door wide open. Inside, it wasn't empty. Not even close. It was packed full. Milk, deli meat, a full vegetable crisper, beer, a wrapped cheesecake on the top shelf, and everything was fresh. I leaned in and checked the labels. Nothing was expired. Somebody had stocked this fridge within the last few days. "This isn't ours, is it?" Barry said, though of course I knew it wasn't. "Did you order groceries?" "No," I said. "And this isn't leftover from the guests. There's no way this stuff would still be good." I pulled out my phone and wrote to the backup Airbnb contact that I'd been given, the real-time guest liaison or whatever they called themselves. I told them about the fridge. 15 minutes later, I got a reply and said, "Oh no, thanks for letting us know. It was an honest mistake. Owner must have left it by accident. Home is definitely vacant though. You're all clear to settle in. Enjoy your stay." No apology, just that vague, breezy dismissal. Barry then cracked open a soda from the fridge because of course he would, and then went to get the bags from the car. I stayed behind and wandered to the bathroom. It was clean, like everything else. Queen bed made tight, suitcase stand folded in the corner, lamp on the nightstand. The adjoining bathroom was lit by one high-frosted window and smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. That's when I noticed the medicine bottles on the back of the toilet. 6 orange prescription containers lined up in a row. I stepped in and picked one up. Hydrocodone, 10 milligrams. But the name was smudged. The date was only a week old though. The others were similar: painkillers, anti-nausea, sleeping aids. Next to them sat a manila envelope thick with paperwork. I slid the top open and saw forms from a regional cancer center. Billing information, treatment plans, chemo schedules, home care notes, radiation prep. I flipped through, my gut turning tighter and tighter. These weren't old papers, they were active, ongoing. "Barry!" I called out. And that's when I heard him scream. It was short and panicked, not drawn out. A gut-level sound that ripped me away from the sink and then down the hall. I followed the sound to the master bedroom where Barry stood frozen just inside the doorway. I pushed past him and stopped cold. There was a body on the carpet. Male, adult, face down. The skin was gray-green and sloughing in places. The stench hit me like a wet rag. Not quite rot, but the early oily phase of decomposition. Metallic, sour, unmistakable. His fingers were curled like claws, arms stretched downward towards the door, as if he was trying to drag himself out. His clothes were damp with old sweat and waste. The back of his shirt was soaked through and stained with a deep maroon where he apparently had leaked out while lying there. One leg was twisted unnaturally beneath him, like it had just given out halfway through the crawl. Barry backed out of the room gagging, and I just stood there, staring, because the rest of it was falling into place in my head. The full fridge, the medicine, the car out front. The Airbnb confirmation that the host had cleared out the week prior. He didn't leave, I said aloud, now numb. He was always still here. Barry didn't answer me. He was halfway in the hallway now, bent over and dry heaving. I stepped in carefully and skirted around the mess on the floor, checked the dresser. It was still full of clothes, men's underwear, socks, folded t-shirts. The nightstand had a charger plugged in. His wallet was open next to a glass of water. I didn't touch it, but I could see his license through the little plastic flap. Same last name as the booking. This was the host, the guy who'd supposedly cleaned the house before we got there. Only he never finished. He died doing it. I turned and followed Barry back down the hall. He was already on the phone with the Airbnb again, pacing in the living room, trying to stay calm but quickly unraveling with every single breath. "Yeah, we just found a body. No, a body. It's in the house you said was clean and empty. No, this isn't like the fridge. This is a man's corpse literally rotting in the back bedroom." I stood in the middle of the kitchen and just stared at the counter, willing my thoughts to line up. The fridge, the prescriptions, the car, the fact that somebody approved our stay without ever even physically checking the property. The fact that we've been dismissed twice by customer service people who clearly didn't verify a fucking thing. There was no malice or conspiracy, just negligence. the kind that gets people hurt. The police showed up maybe 30 minutes later. 2 cruisers, no lights or sirens. The first officer to enter took one breath inside the master bedroom, then doubled back with a hand over his nose. They asked us to step outside, so we stood by our car in the gravel drive, while a paramedic team suited up to examine the body. I think Barry smoked 3 cigarettes in a row and didn't speak the whole time. I just stood there holding my phone, staring at the unread messages piling up from the Airbnb rep, who suddenly had gone very quiet once the words police and dead body were mentioned to them. An older detective arrived not long after, lean and very deliberate, gray mustache and mirrored sunglasses. He spoke to me first. "Do you know the deceased, ma'am?" he asked me. "No," I said. "We were renting the place. He was supposed to be gone. The company told us the house had already been cleaned and the owner had vacated the property." He raised his eyebrow. "You ever been here before?" "No." "You touch anything?" I hesitated. "I moved some papers in the bedroom. They look like treatment forms for cancer." He made some kind of note, and I watched his team bring out the body in a zipped black bag, the outline barely resembling the man that we found face down on that carpet. The smell didn't disappear. It seemed to hang over the driveway like smoke itself, a smell that would soak into our clothes, into our luggage, and into our memories. They questioned Barry next, and his answers seemed to be shorter than mine, or clipped. They asked us to give a formal statement at the station, but they could also tell that we were shaken up, so they offered to let us go after taking photos of our IDs and then verifying our reservation. We left, and the detective said something strange before we did. We had no reports of this man missing, no wellness checks, nobody called. As far as anybody's concerned, he was still alive until you opened up that front door. I nodded but didn't say what I was thinking. He probably had nobody left to check on him. We drove to the nearest Super 8, about 15 minutes outside of town. The lobby smelled like disinfectant and vending machine coffee. Barry didn't say anything until we were lying in the stiff queen bed with the TV on mute, and our shoes still on. "What if we hadn't gone into that room?" he asked. "What if we just spent the weekend there, slept next door while he was rotting down the hall?" I didn't answer because I already knew. The next morning, I got an email from the Airbnb apologizing for the inconvenience and assured me that the matter had been escalated to the safety response team. Our entire trip had been refunded. They even offered us a free future stay. I deleted that email without saying anything in response, and then quickly deleted the app. I flew out for a tech conference, but if I'm being honest, the real plan was to stretch it into a little coastal vacation. Conference stuff was 3 days long, but I took 6 off total, with the back half of the trip wide open. No meetings, no emails, just sun and some space. It was February in New York, and I was sick of stepping over black slush and dodging subway coughs. I needed a reset. The Airbnb was a modern bungalow just outside of LA, Venice adjacent, they called it. Little house tucked between bigger ones, right near the beach. Photos showed some hardwood floors, a full kitchen, sleek appliances, one queen bed, and a desk by a picture window. I figured it was the perfect base. I'd hit the panels and break out sessions, maybe network a little, then disappear into the boardwalk crowd and get a few drinks, talk to some women, hubba hubba, maybe take 1 or 2 back if the vibe was right. When I landed at LAX, everything ran smoothly. The Uber picked me up at the curbside. Nice driver, knew the shortcuts. The check-in instructions were detailed and easy. Lockbox by the side gate, code included in the app, key inside. I got in around 2 in the afternoon. The place looked just like the photos, clean, bright, and smelled like fresh paint and citrus. I unpacked right away because I always do that. Call it compulsive, but I like knowing where my stuff is. I had a roller bag and a backpack, both of which I emptied into drawers and closets within the next 10 minutes. My laptop and camera went on the desk. My wallet, keys, and conference badge landed on the kitchen counter. I noticed there was no other personal clutter, no toothbrushes, no coats hanging near the door, no signs that anybody lived here. But that's the way I like it. I mean, I'm renting the place, not borrowing somebody's house. Those next few days were pretty normal. I hit the conference early, came back late, slept like the dead. I took a few photos of the beach at sunset, even got a few compliments on my camera gear. But on the third day, once the conference was almost over and my schedule loosened up, I started noticing these little things. Doors ajar that I already closed, stuff out of place. I quickly told myself that I was imagining it, but I wasn't. Something was not right in that house. I started with the bathroom door. I remember closing it after my shower, habitual, because I didn't want the steam to escape. I had some shirts hanging in there. But when I came back later that night to brush my teeth before bed, it was now standing wide open. Not halfway, not nudged open. Open, fully. I chalked it up to some kind of draft. The place did have a lot of windows, and I'd had the front one cracked earlier, so that had to be it. But then it was the bedroom closet, and I never used those things. It was too easy to forget things in a rush. Still, one morning after a walk on the beach, I came back and noticed that bifold door was pushed in slightly, like somebody had just slipped in to grab a jacket. I didn't even want it open at first. I just stared at it for a while, then slowly pulled the doors apart. Nothing inside, just my luggage, zipped up and right where I left it. But all of this had started to get in my head. That night, I found the peanut butter jar sitting out on the counter, lid open, spoon right next to it. I hadn't eaten any. I hadn't even touched the thing since I unloaded my groceries. And that's when I got the feeling. The one that you get when you know, not think, know somebody's been in your stuff. The next day, I took photos of everything before I left. Wide shots of every room, time-stamped as well. I even arranged a few things in deliberate ways. A folded dish towel on the oven handle. My charger coiled up just so on the nightstand. I went out for lunch and checked the photos when I got back. Sure enough, the towel was now different, sloppier. The charger was uncoiled and rewrapped in this totally different loop. The peanut butter jar was now in the pantry, not the fridge. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, and the silence was wrong. The kind of silence that waits to be broken. Not peaceful, but expectant. Like I wasn't supposed to be there, or maybe like I wasn't alone. That night I took a lot more drastic measures. I set my phone on the entry table and aimed it straight at the front door. I propped it against a stack of coasters, set it to record video, and made sure the battery was at 100%. Then I opened the app and ordered an Uber. I had no intention of going anywhere. I just needed to make it look like I had. When the driver pulled up, I walked out, locked the door, and climbed in. I asked him to take me around the block and then drop me back on Pacific Avenue. He didn't ask me any questions, and I tipped him extra and then waited until he turned the corner before looping back to the house on foot. My heart was racing. I cut through an alley and crouched behind a neighbor's hedge until I had a clear view of the street. There was a car in the driveway that had not been there before. Dark blue SUV, nondescript, no plates on the front. I took a photo of it just in case. I approached the house slowly. The front door was cracked open. I stood outside for a few seconds just listening. Then, I pushed it open and stepped inside. The first thing I heard was movement, soft, unhurried footsteps in the back of the house, then a cupboard opening. I stayed low and moved fast, following the sounds to the kitchen. A man stood there, rummaging through the fridge, middle-aged, wearing a plain white hoodie and jeans. His hair was thinning, face puffy, like he hadn't slept in a while. When he turned and saw me, he froze like I just hit him with a spotlight. "Whoa, whoa," he said, hands half raised. "You scared me, man." "Who the fuck are you?" I asked, not yelling, just flatly. "I'm the owner," he said quickly. It's my house. No, it's not, I said. Not right now. I have a reservation through Sunday. Right, he said, nodding. I know, I left some stuff here. I figured while you were out. I didn't mean to scare you. Bullshit, I responded. You've been here the whole time. He stepped toward the door casual. Look, man, I didn't touch anything, all right? I was just grabbing a few things. Don't move, I said to him. My phone's been recording the door since I left. I saw your car. You've been coming and going. He hesitated, and I watched his face change. The mask slipped for a second. Not panic, but calculation. He realized that I wasn't buying his story. He also realized that I wasn't just going to let him leave. I pulled out my phone and hit the call button. Calling the cops. Hey, come on, he said, trying to sound calm. That's not necessary. I'm not dangerous, I swear. This is my place, man. I just thought I could come by while nobody was home. I didn't think you'd be back so soon. You went through my shit. He looked away. I'm missing $500 from my luggage, and I know it was in there. His hands tightened at his side. And if I go check right now, I said, am I gonna find my laptop in your bag? I didn't get an answer, just that faint buzz of tension in the air, like we were two wires pressed together, waiting to spark. He then dropped his head and muttered, Look, you don't need to call them. I'll give it back. I already called. He swore and spun around like he might bolt, but the front door was behind me now, and I'm not moving. A few minutes later, the cops showed up and I showed them the video of the phone, and the guy just stood there looking deflated. They went through his bag and found my laptop wrapped up in a sweatshirt, plus the small wad of cash. Some of the bills had my initials on the corner. I marked them on a whim when I packed. I travel a lot, and I have a lot of people try to steal from me before, so it's just something I do. The cops didn't cuff him, but they escorted him out and warned him not to return. They let me file a full statement. I watched his car disappear down the block, and it wasn't until it was completely out of sight that my hands finally started to shake. The cops told me he wasn't technically trespassing because he was the legal owner, and he hadn't used force to enter. It would take a formal complaint from Airbnb for charges to stick, but the officer nodded toward the recording on my phone and said, That'll definitely help. They're going to want to see that. I told them that I'd send it to whoever needed it. That night, because of everything, I didn't sleep much. I pushed the chair under the doorknob like some old cartoon, kept the lights on in every room, and stacked my suitcase in front of the front bedroom window, just in case I heard glass breaking. I waited for the sound of tires on gravel, the glint of that blue SUV pulling back into view, but it never came. I called the Airbnb first thing in the morning, walked them through everything that took place. To their credit, they didn't fight on anything. The woman I spoke to sounded young but serious enough. She asked for the video, the photos of the car, and the copy of the police report, which I emailed over that afternoon. By the end of that day, I had a full refund. They also added credit to my account and sent a follow-up message saying the host had been permanently suspended. Apparently, this wasn't the first time they'd gotten complaints about him. We were already reviewing his activity, she told me. I'm really sorry it took something like this to push it over the line. So am I. I stayed that last night of the trip in a boutique hotel closer to downtown. It wasn't fancy, cramped room, barely enough space to turn around in the shower, but the key card worked and nobody crept through my kitchen while I was gone, so that's good, right? I kept thinking about how easily I could have missed it though, if I stayed out a little longer that day or turned the camera a few degrees to the left. I might have come back to a wiped laptop, empty cash stash, and a gaslit conversation with some apologetic stranger claiming, "Oh wow, you must have just misplaced it." I don't know what would have happened if I caught him at the wrong moment either, if I hadn't kept my voice steady, if he decided that I was just another mark. I still use Airbnb. I'm not stupid. I know most of the hosts aren't like that. The company made it right and they didn't even dodge the damage. But now I photograph everything, I mark all my bills, and I never ever leave without locking every entry point and double checking it on my way out. I've lived alone for most of my adult life, not by some great design or a tragedy, just by default. No kids, no ex-wife, not even a dog. I had a job that I didn't hate, enough friends to keep me from going completely nuts, and a few hobbies that would pass the time. The rest was just filler. If something needed done, I would do it eventually. Laundry, dishes, groceries, car maintenance. All of it existed on this weird clock of motivation that rarely lined up with logic. I kept the fridge mostly empty because I hated grocery stores. I hated cooking even more. Most nights I'd realize that I was hungry, hop in the car for a drive-thru or a pickup order. I knew every greasy spoon and every takeout window within a 10-mile radius. The place that I lived in was this squat little rental, just off a frontage road behind a rundown strip mall. One bedroom, no yard to speak of, blinds that were always crooked. It was quiet enough, which is all I really cared about. Never had any trouble with the neighbors. Never had any real sense of community either. Most nights I'd get home late, kick off my boots, fire up Hulu or PlayStation, and ride the couch into the early hours. Sometimes I'd scroll through dating apps or online auctions just to kill some time. I didn't drink much, never saw the appeal, and I never touched drugs. I was just lazy in a way that felt like it ran in my blood. The only thing I really stayed on top of was work. I wasn't passionate about it or anything, but it kept the lights on, paid my rent. I was the kind of guy who just did it enough to keep moving forward, even if that meant barely. The house was cluttered but not filthy. The car had its issues but still ran. I didn't owe anybody anything and nobody owed me. It was a very simple, low-stakes existence, and I'd gotten real comfortable living in that way. Until one of these nights, it came off the rails because I couldn't be bothered to cook dinner. That night, I got off work around 9. I was wiped. I hadn't eaten anything since noon, and the idea of boiling water or even making a sandwich felt like a whole ordeal. So I grabbed my keys, called in an order to this hole-in-the-wall Chinese place that I like, Paco Panda, out by the gas station. I picked something to stream while I waited. Some murder show probably. I just remember my stomach twisting up at the thought of sesame chicken. It was only a short drive, maybe 10 minutes. The place was mostly empty when I walked in. I paid, grabbed my bag, and thanked the lady at the counter, and went back to my car. The food smelled amazing. I remember turning the heater on full blast even though it was early fall. My idea of a food hack. I just wanted to get home, plant my ass on the couch, and eat straight from the cartons. I hit the first light coming out of the parking lot and came to a stop. Music was playing, Let's Go to War by the Murder Dolls, and everything was normal until I noticed movement off to my left. There was this old sun-bleached sedan pulling up beside me, engine rattling, windows down. I glanced over and saw 4 guys inside, early 20s maybe. At first I thought they were trying to get my attention about something, maybe my lights were off or I dropped my wallet or something. I turned my music down and rolled my window halfway. "What?" I called out to them. The guy in the passenger seat leaned out and yelled at me. "You look like you beat off to cartoons, bro." There was this beat where I really didn't react, and then it kind of clicked. They were just being dickheads. I don't know why, but I fired back something without thinking. "Is that something you know a lot about? You like cartoon cum time?" His face dropped, just for a second, but it was enough. Then the light turned green and I gunned it. I didn't expect them to follow me, but they did. They didn't tailgate me or try to run me off the road or anything crazy at first. They just stayed behind me, nice and steady. I took a few more turns trying to be sure they were. They matched every move. I pulled into this random grocery store lot and looped around to see if they break off, but they didn't. By the time I made it back to my neighborhood, my hands were sweating on the wheel. I considered circling the block maybe, trying to lose them, but I figured screw it. They'll get bored eventually, right? I pulled into my driveway and left the engine running. Their car rolled up right behind me and stopped in the street. 3 of them got out. The driver stayed put. I didn't recognize any of them. One was tall and wiry, wearing this ski cap even though it wasn't cold out. Another had a hoodie with the strings tied around his face now. The third looked like he had prison muscle, just thick and mean. They didn't charge at my car or anything, they just spread out, slowly walking around me, looking in the windows and muttering something to each other. I stayed in the driver's seat, clutching the steering wheel like a lifeline. My phone was in my pocket, but I hadn't reached for it. I didn't want to draw any attention. "All right, "Come on out, tough guy," one of them said. "Yeah, keep talking that shit," said another, tapping on the glass with his knuckle. I still didn't move. One of them kicked the driver's side door, hard enough to rattle me, and dented it, of course. Then they all laughed. They stood in my yard for maybe 5 more minutes, pointing at stuff, my trash cans, the porch light, my car, just taking stock of what they could fuck with. I expected them to key my doors, to slash a tire, or maybe worse, but eventually they got back in their car and took off without another word. I sat there for another 5 minutes before moving, just breathing, trying to calm down. Then I grabbed my food, went inside, and double-locked the door. It took me a while to eat. My hands were still shaking, but after a few bites and a few episodes of whatever was on Hulu, things started to settle. I actually started to feel a little stupid about it. Probably just bored kids looking for a thrill. Nothing too serious. By 10, I'd moved on to playing some kind of shooter online. The tension was gone. I was in my boxers, half a beer left on the coffee table, game controller in my hand, completely relaxed. That was at least until past midnight, and that's when I heard footsteps outside my house. Not distant ones, not from the sidewalk or the road. These were closer, on my driveway, slow, heavy crunches. I muted the TV and went to the front window, moving the curtain just enough to peek through. There it was, same shitty sedan, parked in the same exact spot, 3 figures moving up the path to my front door. And this time, they weren't joking around. Same guys, same car, same dead-eyed swagger, like they owned the night itself. One of them had something in his hand, I couldn't really tell what. Maybe a tire iron or a flashlight, but it caught the porch light weird and had this glint and shadow to it. I backed away from the window and locked the deadbolt, then the knob, then slid on the security chain across. My heart was thudding so loud it sounded like footsteps in my ears too. I didn't have a gun, never thought I needed one. I didn't even have mace. Just the kitchen full of dull knives and a vague sense of regret. One of the guys banged on the door, flat palm first and then with his fist. He barked at me to open up. "Come on, you tough shit. Come say what you said earlier." They pounded harder. The door was old, hollow core, rental grade garbage. It wouldn't last too long if they really wanted in. For a second I couldn't move. I just stood there in the living room in my socks, lights still on, beer going warm. My mouth was dry as chalk. I thought about calling the cops, but what would I say? 3 guys are outside being scary? I hung out with these rough kids growing up, and I knew how that would go. They'd be gone before a cruiser even showed up, if one even showed up. I turned off the lights. In the dark, the panic sharpened. It made everything feel thinner and more fragile. I could hear them talking out there, louder now. One of them was trying the doorknob. Another stomped on the steps like a child throwing a fit. Then it went quiet. I crept inside the back bedroom. My closet door was open, and inside was something I haven't touched in years, this cheap-ass katana that I bought at the state fair back in high school. It wasn't sharpened, just some steel replica meant to sit on a stand. But it was heavy, long, and intimidating enough in the right lighting. I grabbed it, then opened up a plastic bin where I kept this old Halloween junk, pulled out the mask that I wore a few years ago, this rubber demon face with warped horns and sharp teeth. It stank of dust and plastic, but I shoved it on and made for the back door. I slipped outside, moving along the side of the house, keeping low. The grass under my feet was wet. My heart was still slamming in my chest. I inched forward until I could see the 3 of them again, still near the porch, looking pissed and confused. 30 more seconds, dumbass, one of them called out. Then we break your fucking windows. I didn't give myself any time to think or think twice. I charged. I came around the side of the house full speed, barefoot and wild, swinging the katana over my head like a lunatic. I didn't yell anything coherent, just a howl and this high and raw that ripped out of my chest. They all turned at once. I don't know what they thought they saw, a masked freak with a sword, barefoot and snarling, but it was enough. One of them screamed. The big one tripped over his own feet trying to run backwards, and they all scrambled back to their car, door slamming, tires screeching as they peeled off into the dark. I stood there in the yard until the engine noise faded, and that was the last time I ever saw them. After that, I started locking the doors earlier, got a motion light installed, Even went and bought a real baseball bat, not for show. I still eat that Chinese takeout. I still live alone. Still waste far too much time on the couch, but I don't really mouth off to strangers anymore. When I was younger and still living in the city, I moved apartments like other people would change clothes. It wasn't that I was getting evicted or anything, they were just these super cheap places. Always a few in classifieds or easy to bounce between if your lease was up or if you didn't like the neighborhood anymore. I didn't own too much either, bed, couch, TV, some clothes, so packing up and leaving wasn't really that big of a deal. That lifestyle kind of fit me. Everything about it made sense at the time. I liked being close to the action. I liked that I could walk to a bar, hit a movie, grab food, all without needing to plan really anything. The last place that I lived before it all went bad was on the east side, right off this long boulevard that cut through a bunch of old brick duplexes. My apartment was a little bigger than the one before it. The floors were warped, the heater ticked all night like it was full of rocks, but it was mine. I moved in just as summer was ending. I remember dragging my mattress up the stairs and being drenched in sweat by the time I got to the top. There was this weird smell in the hallway too, kind of like old carpet with rotting fruit, but I figured I'll get used to it. You always do. The unit across from mine had its blinds drawn and a door scuffed to hell. I didn't think too much of it, just another tenant, right? The guy who lived there looked like he worked construction or maybe bounced at one of the bars. Shaved head, wide shoulders, sunburnt neck. He had a woman too, but I didn't really see much of her in the beginning. I just heard her. Well, I heard both of them. The fights escalated slowly, then all at once. First it was raised voices, then crashes and thuds. I'd lie awake on my couch with the volume turned up just to drown it all out, but it always cut through. Him yelling like a man possessed, her begging like she was already half defeated. Sometimes I'd hear her out in the hallway, crying, late at night when I got back from the bar. Just her voice echoing off that brick night after night. The cops came twice. I called both times. They never stayed more than 10 minutes. One time I watched the peephole, saw the guy standing shirtless in the doorway, arms crossed, just nodding while one of the officers asked him a few questions. The second time they didn't even get past the front door. It was like they had this routine: get in, calm things down, leave before the paperwork would start to pile up. I actually started sleeping with earplugs, but they didn't help. You can't drown out somebody being hit, and you can't unhear that slap, that wet, awful sound, or the silence that always followed it. Then came the night that I remember being the worst. It had been quiet for 2 days straight, and I thought maybe, just maybe, she finally left him. I got home around 7, made some pasta, and sat down to eat in front of the TV. Around 8:30, it started up again, a scream that cut through everything. And it wasn't just fear, it was panic, full body panic. I muted the TV, already standing up. He was yelling and stomping around. Then I heard something shatter. I heard her say, "Don't, please, don't do that again." And it sounded like somebody getting slammed into the wall, my wall. Didn't really think, I just acted. Grabbed my phone and called the police, again. I told them it's serious, that he actually might kill her this time. Somebody needed to come right now. They gave me the same answer as before. If nobody from that apartment called, their hands were tied unless I heard a weapon, whatever that meant. So I hung up and crossed the hall. No plan, just heat in my chest and a sick churn in my stomach. I knocked, no answer, just the muffled chaos inside. I pounded harder and the whole door rattled. This time it was ripped open and there he was. He looked taller in the doorway. He filled it even, shoulders so wide they cast a shadow far over me. His chest was bare, his stomach was heaving, and his face was soaked in sweat and wild-eyed with rage. His mouth was tight like he was chewing on broken glass. "What the fuck do you want?" he asked me. "Look, she's screaming, man," I said. "I already called the cops. Enough is enough." He stared at me, no blink, no twitch, and I realized just how close I was to him, only a few inches. I could smell the beer on his breath, the sweat soaking into his skin. "I'm not gonna say it again," I told him. "Let her go." And And that's when it happened. He didn't say a word to me, didn't shout, just grabbed the front of my shirt and yanked me so far forward that my feet left the ground. I slammed into the hallway wall. Pain exploded in my ribs. I tried to push him back to get some space, but the fist came down and caught me clean across the jaw. I saw white and dropped. He kept coming though. I scrambled and crawled backwards down the hallway toward my own door. He landed a boot in my stomach, and I coughed so hard that I thought my lungs were about to come up. He didn't stop either. Another punch caught me in the cheek. I hit the floor hard and rolled toward my door, everything spinning. Behind him, I just saw her, just a flash, standing in the doorway holding the frame, blood running from her nose. She screamed at me to run. Her voice was hollow though, like somebody that's already halfway gone. I got my key in the lock barely, yanked open the door, and staggered inside. He followed me, still swinging. I threw my weight against the door and managed to get it shut just long enough to drop the chain lock. He pounded on the other side, still yelling at me through the door. I slid down to the floor panting, spilling blood onto my tile. I thought it was over then, but he didn't go away. I sat there with my back up against the door, shaking uncontrollably. My left eye was swole shut, and I couldn't take a full breath without pain ripping through my ribs. My hands were sticky with blood, some his, mostly mine. Through the door, I could still hear him out there, pacing, breathing, whispering things that I couldn't quite make out. The door then jolted hard and I jumped up. Another slam, then a pause, then the wood cracking. I scrambled backward, trying to drag the coffee table across the entryway, but my arms wouldn't move right. I think it was dislocated. The chain lock snapped and the door buckled and groaned. Then it gave out completely. He stood there in the frame, calm now, breathing slowly. "Should have just minded your own fucking business," he said. I tried to stand and didn't make it. He crossed my room in 2 steps, grabbed me by the collar, and flung me toward the hallway. I hit the wall shoulder first and dropped. I tried to crawl, but he kicked the back of my head and I folded. Then came more punches, hard, deep ones to the ribs and back, like he was trying to reach through me. I think I blacked out for a second because when I opened up my eyes, I was in my bedroom. He dragged me there. I was on the mattress on my back, the bed lopsided from the force that he'd thrown me in with. My blood was already soaking into the sheets. He stood over me panting, then reached down, and this is the part that still sticks with me the most, pulled the blanket up over me, tucked it around my sides like a mother putting her kid to sleep. "Don't knock on my fucking door again," he said. "You don't call anyone, you don't even look at me or her." He turned around and started walking, then stopped in the doorway. "Oh, I'm taking this too," he added. I couldn't see it clearly, but I heard the clink, the hook near the front door, the spare key that I always left hanging there. He took it. "If I hear you say a word to anybody," he said, "I'll come in while you're sleeping and I'll slit your fucking throat." And then just like that, he was gone. The door creaked closed behind him. I heard his boots retreat across the hallway, the quiet pull of his apartment door opening and then shutting. No lock, no final word, just that silence again. I laid in bed until morning and didn't sleep at all, didn't move, just stared at the ceiling and listened to the pipes moan behind the wall. Every little creak sounded like another footstep. Every car door outside made my stomach twist. I kept thinking he was coming back, that he'd left something unfinished. I didn't go to work the next day or the next day after that. I didn't call the cops because, again, what would I say? That I got beat up for playing hero? That I poked my nose where it didn't belong? They probably wouldn't even come out again. So a week later, I started looking for new places. It took me 2 full months, but I finally got out. Didn't even break the lease, just paid through the end and walked. I left half my furniture behind. I couldn't stand to look at the bed again. The mattress was still bloody. I didn't even have it in me to throw it out. Just let the landlord deal with it. Now I triple check my locks. I keep my blinds shut. I flinch when somebody knocks on the wall, even if it's just the pipes. I still don't even sleep right to this day. I'll wake up thinking he's back, standing at the foot of my bed, holding up that key. I never saw that woman again either. Sometimes or occasionally I'll think back to her, wonder if she ever got out. or if she's still in there, taking those punches and screaming behind those old, paper-thin walls. It was the spring of 1996. I was a 15-year-old American girl living in Pakistan with my grandparents. My family had been going through some difficult times back home in the US, and my mother, wanting to shield me from the turmoil, decided it would be best for me to live abroad for a while. What started as this temporary arrangement turned into something a lot more permanent by choice. I'd been in Pakistan since the age of 11, and over time, it truly began to feel like home. I embraced the culture, learned the language, and built strong relationships with my family and friends. Despite having the option to return to the US after every visit, I always chose to stay. Pakistan just became my second home. Our household was always full. My grandparents, my aunt and uncle, their 3 children, the neighbors, and of course, frequent visitors. We had this open door policy, both literally and figuratively. It was the kind of neighborhood where people rarely locked their doors during the day. It felt safe, secure, or at least so we thought. Inside households like ours, it's common to hire domestic help, cooks, cleaners, and general helpers. While my family opted for female help, especially when daughters were in the house, some would prefer young male workers who were seen as stronger and more agile. My grandparents hired this male helper, Bashir, who had his own quarters outside the house. Despite his presence being normalized in our culture, I always felt this deep unease around him. Maybe it was instinctual or maybe just caution, but I got into this habit of locking any room that I was in when I was home, alone or not, just in case. Being in Pakistan is different. My grandparents were wealthy, but knew danger could lie around any corner, especially for a young girl like myself. And on one particular day in spring, everything changed. That afternoon, I was relaxing in my aunt and uncle's bedroom watching TV. It was my favorite spot when they weren't home because they had this private television, unlike the shared one inside the family lounge downstairs. Now, I had no idea at the time, but I was alone in the house for the first time since moving to Pakistan. My grandfather was at work, my aunt and uncle had taken the kids to another town, and my grandmother had just left for an errand with our driver. Then came a knock, loud, repetitive, and urgent. I paused the TV and placed my ear against the door. It was Bashir. He was calling my name in a hurried, anxious tone, asking me to open up. When I asked what he needed, he claimed he had something to give to me. I refused, and he quickly shifted, saying he needed to ask me something. So I told him to ask me through the door. But he didn't respond with words. Instead, he began turning the knob and pushing it against the door frame a lot more forcefully. My heart started pounding and reality sank in. I was alone with him. Panic set in, but so did instinct. I looked around for options. The phone in the bedroom was useless without the phone directory, which was downstairs near my grandparents' room. I didn't have any phone numbers memorized. I looked out the front window, hoping to spot somebody nearby, maybe the neighbor or the friend who lived across the street, but no such luck. Meanwhile, Bashir was still trying to get in. I thought about hiding in the closet, but it had no lock. I made a quick decision and ran to the attached bathroom. It had 2 locks. I secured both and climbed up to the small window high up on the wall, hoping to get somebody's attention. Once up there, I could see the neighboring house very clearly and tried yelling to get the helpers outside, but just as I was about to scream louder, I heard a familiar voice. It was my grandmother. She was calling my name from the hallway. I waited for confirmation though, and when I finally heard her voice again, I carefully opened up the bathroom door and then the bedroom door to find my grandmother standing alone and breathless. She immediately apologized, saying she just realized that I was home alone by myself and had now rushed back. She and I both knew what a dangerous mistake it had been to leave me alone that day. I never ended up telling her what Bashir had done. I don't know if she saw him retreat from the door or noticed something was off, but I kept it to myself. The whole ordeal lasted no more than 20 minutes, but it was the most terrifying 20 minutes of my life. Feeling trapped, helpless, and vulnerable inside your own home was this brutal awakening. Years later in the mid-2000s, I returned to Pakistan for a visit with my mom. By then, I was back in the US full-time. One afternoon while visiting my grandparents, my mom and aunts started to tease me about this quote-unquote surprise visitor who had come all the way from another village just to see me. They were laughing and nudging each other as they told me to come into the living room. I walked in and there he was, Bashir. My heart sank. He looked unwell. His eyes were bloodshot, and he had that dazed look of somebody who hadn't slept in days. He stared at me with this strange intensity. I kept my face calm and greeted him politely and said, I'd heard he got married. Congratulations. He nodded silently. I quickly excused myself and went to my room. That was the last time I saw him. Even after all those years, seeing him brought everything flooding back to me. The fear, the panic, the knowledge that something horrible could indeed have happened that day. Now, I'll never know what his true intentions were, but my gut tells me that I narrowly escaped something awful. What he didn't know was that I wasn't some naive, easily fooled girl. I was a fighter. I'd grown up with 2 older brothers and had been learning karate since I was 6. My instructor actually used to call me Little Tiger, and if he would have managed to break through those doors, he would have met the tiger inside me. That day shaped me. It taught me about instincts, strength, and survival, and I've carried all that silently with me for years, but today, I finally speak it out loud. Thanks for listening.
Iowa is one of those places I can feel a bit cut off from society. My town was literally a school, a grocery store, a gas station, a post office, and a barn that was converted into a roller rink with a population of about 900. For the sake of the story, I'll refer to the town as Outpost 19. I was 17 when this happened, in my senior year of high school. My best friend, Jerry, had moved to Cedar Rapids because his parents had gotten divorced and his mom received full custody, at least until he was 18. Jerry had been dating a girl who lived at Outpost 19, so every weekend he would make the hour drive back into town to see his dad, hang out with his girlfriend, and if he had time, we would meet up and have a beer. This was the routine for about a year. I remember when this story happened. Graduation was approaching, but the school year wasn't quite over yet. One weekend, Jerry came back into town like usual, but his girlfriend was on vacation with her family, so we decided to go cruising around. We considered making a stop at the roller rink, but quickly dismissed that idea. Since it was a Saturday night, a bunch of kids would be there, so we literally end up just driving around and throwing empty beer bottles at road signs. Around this time period, I'd picked up some part-time work at the local grocery store, restocking inventory on weeknights. Point being, I would listen to crime podcasts and creepypastas during my shifts. There was one story called The Showers that really stuck with me. The story was about a guy who went on a witch hunt through the back roads of Nebraska, searching for a mysterious building that his teacher told him about, only to discover something truly horrifying lurking within the structure. Nebraska and Iowa share very similar landscapes, and the way the author described the setting reminded me a lot of the prairies and farmlands surrounding Outpost 19. Since Jerry and I were bored enough to be driving around aimlessly, I suggested that we try to go somewhere that looked abandoned and check it out, withholding that I had gotten the idea from a creepypasta I heard on YouTube. Truth be told, we had never really done too much exploring outside of our hometown. Sure, we had gone fishing in the nearby rivers, and as kids, would play manhunt in the cornfields, but we never went snooping around someone else's property. I guess we were bored enough to take the risks that night. So we drove around a bit, until we came upon a dirt road that was situated between two cornfields, which led up to what looked like a 2-story barn. There were absolutely no lights on anywhere, just the moon and the headlights on Jerry's truck, which I suggested he shut off before turning onto the dirt road. We moved slowly and carefully along the dirt road until we reached the barn house at the end. I was geeking out on the inside because this was literally just like the story. But we had no idea if this barn house was actually abandoned. We could have been shot at by some angry farmer for trespassing. But there wasn't a soul in sight. So Jerry turned his truck around to face the dirt road and killed the engine. If we had to make a quick getaway, at least the truck would be facing in the right direction. We then got out of the truck and made our way toward the barn. As I said before, there were no lights anywhere on this property. But in the moonlight, I saw one of those galvanized windmills, a couple of water troughs that were dumped over, and a silo next to the barn. This place looked like it was a cattle ranch. But where were all the animals? I guess there was only one way to find out. There were a few wooden doors on the side of the barn that we tried to open, but each one was locked. So we made our way to the giant double doors that were in the very front of the building, and to our surprise, they swung right open. We immediately noticed that there was a faint glow coming from several areas within the building. I quickly realized that it was candlelight. Jerry had brought along a flashlight, but said that he wouldn't turn it on unless he absolutely needed to, as to not give away our position to the aforementioned angry farmer with a gun. But even with the candlelight, it was impossible to see inside this building. That's when I got this sinking feeling, telling me that we should leave right away. Jerry turned on his flashlight and shined it into the building. There were several candelabras placed on tables and railings throughout the foyer. The layout was almost like a wedding venue. We didn't see anyone, but someone had to have lit all these candles. We then noticed what looked like an altar in the center of the room. There was an unspoken thing between Jerry and I. We were going to have to see what was on this altar. And as we got closer, I saw a large knife between two candlesticks that had been stabbed into something. We had to get a bit closer to see what it was, and we soon discovered what looked like a dead lamb. Jerry, I think it's time to leave. Now. We booked it back to the truck, got in, and started it up. I took one last look behind us before we sped off back down the dirt road. I shit you not, I could see several figures standing outside the barn, and we even heard something hitting the tailgate of the truck before we peeled out of there. We had to GPS our way back to Outpost 19. I would say it took about 30 minutes to get back there. We didn't tell anyone about what happened because we didn't want to get into trouble for trespassing. There was a small dent on Jerry's tailgate. We assumed that one of the people I saw outside the barn must have thrown a rock or something. I lived at Outpost 19 for another year before I moved to Des Moines to work in construction. And a year after that, my parents retired and moved away as well, so there's no reason for me to return to that town ever again. I've tried to research any dairy or cattle farms located outside Outpost 19, but I can't be sure if any of them were the place that we were at that night. It was quite dark, and the place could look completely different during the day. I've heard rumors that many satanic cults have compounds in secluded areas of Iowa. This is only a guess, but I think we stumbled into one of these compounds that night and interrupted some kind of ritual that was taking place in that barn. During my early 20s, I worked as a meter reader in Iowa City. A meter reader is someone who records how much electricity, gas, or water you've used each month. If your meters are on the inside and you want an accurate bill, a meter reader must enter your home whether you're there or not to let them in. As a side note, we only enter houses if consent was given when the customer first signs up for the service. Customers also provide us with keys if necessary. Entering a home when the owner is not present is something that I've never gotten used to. No matter how loudly I knock, I can never shake this uneasy feeling that I wasn't welcome there. The inside of a home is the ultimate private space. A home's exterior is just the image of ourselves that we project to the rest of the world. However, the further you venture inside, the closer you come to truly seeing what kind of person lives there. And if you want the raw, unfiltered truth, head for the basement. I hate basements. I've seen walls that look like giant static-filled TV screens, until I realized it was roaches scurrying across a white background, cobwebs so thick it looked like a cotton candy machine had exploded. I've seen rats, snakes, feces, weapons, neglected children, abused pets, homeless squatters, massive hordes, bizarre sexual items, a makeshift meth lab, and even a coffin. There are rational explanations for all these things. Well, maybe not the coffin. But there was one basement where I found something that was beyond the grasp of logic, and that's what made it so terrifying. It was at an old apartment house. From the outside, it looked like any other home on the block. I entered the back door and found myself at the top of a staircase. I ran my hand along the wall until I grazed a light switch. I flipped the switch, but no lights turned on. I wasn't carrying a flashlight. A typical route for me involved 5 or 6 hours of walking, so I tried to carry as little as possible. Oftentimes, I would use a light from my handheld screen, but it only illuminated whatever was about a foot in front of it. It was essentially the world's worst lantern. I aimed it and made my way down into the darkness. Once at the bottom, I blindly shuffled across the room, one baby step at a time. With arms outstretched and head down, I eventually made it to the far side of the basement. I shined the dim light from my handheld along the wall and discovered 2 doors. Each door led into its own small room. I chose the one on the right and found the meters in the far corner. As I entered the data, I began hearing noises coming from the other room. Something was moving around in there, and there was some whimpering that grew louder the longer I listened. I eventually realized it was a dog. It sounded weak and distressed. I tried to open the door, but it was locked. At this point, the dog was scratching on the other side. I felt helpless. I reported it when I got back to the office, but I couldn't shake the thought of that dog being trapped down there in that basement. It stuck with me over the next month until it was time to return. So there I was, in the same place a month later, back inside that dark basement. At least this time, I knew where the meters were located. I shuffled back to those small rooms and entered the one on the right, while carefully listening for any sounds that may come from the other room. This time I heard nothing. I read the meters and started making my way back, but I couldn't shake that memory of the dog. Was it still trapped inside that room? Curiosity got the best of me. I stood outside the door for a few moments, just listening, but heard nothing. That's when I made a huge mistake. I tried to open the door. I had barely jiggled the doorknob when I first heard it. It was a blood-curdling scream, unlike anything I have ever heard. It was a sound that I didn't think a human was capable of producing. Short, piercing, high-pitched shrieks, followed by abruptly low, drawn-out, guttural moans. That ultimately morphed into something that I can only describe as crying, but much louder. It was all over the place, some sort of psychotic, free-form jazz. I stumbled backwards, nearly losing my balance. I shouted something like, "Hello? Who's in there?" But there was no response, just more screaming. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" Still no response. The screaming continued. There was no doubt that whoever was in there heard me. Apparently they didn't want my help at all. They just wanted me gone. So I fumbled my way through the dark room, toward the exit. When I got to the top of the stairs, I just stood there, listening. I was trying to wrap my mind around what I was hearing. I waited for the screaming to stop, but it never did. When I finally left, it was still as loud and demented as it was when it began. I felt relieved, but that quickly vanished when I realized I had to do it all over again next month. I reported what I heard, but nothing came of it. As my return drew near, a sense of dread began to grow inside of me. What kind of lunatic sits alone in total darkness and silence? My mind created endless explanations of what kind of hell was beyond that door. By the time I returned, I had built them up in my mind so much that anyone other than Lucifer himself would have been a letdown. But there was no sign of anyone, or even over the next several months. I had nearly given up on solving the mystery when a stroke of luck pulled me back in. One night, I went to a concert with my friend, Laura. After the show, I gave her a ride home. She moved somewhat recently, so she had to give me directions. I didn't really pay much attention to where she was leading me, until she pointed to a house a ways up the street. I couldn't believe it. She had moved into the house with a mysterious room in the basement. This is going to sound weird, but have you ever noticed anything odd about the basement at this? Before I could even finish my sentence, she blurted out, "Some crazy guy lives down there." Finally, I had confirmation. She went on to tell me that even though her apartment was located in the attic, she often heard him yelling late at night. But that wasn't all. She had actually met him. One day, while walking to her car, she saw him standing in the lawn. He was perfectly still, with no expression on his face. He was directly in her path, so she cautiously made her way around him. He was staring at her, so she offered a friendly "hello" as she passed. He had no reaction, except for one unsettling exception. He stuck his tongue out at her, then quickly sucked it back into his mouth, then resumed acting like a statue. Thoroughly creeped out, she got in her car and drove away. It was about 2 or 3 months later when I finally met him. I entered the back door, like I had so many months before, but this time something was different. There was a light on down in the basement. I peered down the staircase. At the bottom, a ragged-looking dog was staring back at me. It was the same dog I had heard during my first visit. Then, I noticed something else. Behind the dog, I could see a pair of bare feet. The ceiling blocked my view of whoever was standing there, but it didn't matter. I knew it was him. I should have left right then, but I didn't. I know this probably doesn't make any sense, but at this point, my desire to finally get some answers outweighed my fear. I called out, "Hello? It's the meter reader." I then began to make my descent. As I made my way down, more of him was revealed to me, slowly. He looked to be middle-aged. His head was shaved. His eyes were wild. He was wearing pants, but no shirt. What I remember the most about him was how lean and sinewy his body looked. It looked like the body of a person that was never at rest. I explained to him who I was and what I was doing there. And to my surprise, not only did he talk to me, but he acted and sounded somewhat normal. The volume and pitch of his voice was odd, but he said the same sorts of things that people typically say to meter readers. I even started to doubt whether or not he was the same man I had heard screaming. But his behavior slowly removed any doubts. As I read the meters, he rapidly paced back and forth. He was constantly wringing his hands together and sporadically cocking his head from one side to the other. The longer he talked, the more agitated he became. He began grimacing, and little verbal tics started popping up in his speech. Every so often he would blurt out, "Aw," in the middle of a sentence. He was trying his best to suppress these sounds, but he was losing that battle. I started to make my way toward the exit, and he followed. His verbal outbursts grew louder and more frequent. I was becoming petrified. When I got to the stairs, our conversation came to an end, and I said goodbye. As I turned to head up the staircase, he could no longer hold back, and he began screaming. The very same unforgettable screams I had heard coming from the locked room. I ran up the stairs as fast as my legs would carry me, flung open the door, and rushed back into the daylight. A couple of months later, I had some friends over my place, including Laura. I was excited to tell her about my encounter, but as I was relaying what happened, I could tell that something else was on her mind. When I finished telling my story, she told me about something that she had seen a couple of weeks earlier. One day, she noticed flashing lights outside her window. When she looked outside, she saw a couple of police officers placing the man from the basement in the back seat of a squad car. She later found out from another tenant that he had attacked someone with a knife. That was the last we ever saw of him. I don't know what became of the man in the basement. I'd like to think that he got the help he needed, but maybe that's just because I'd rather not think about the alternative.
There's always a reason to be afraid.